Are like, yeah, you are.
Reacher, the sexiest man alive.
Oh, where are we going? We're live.
Yeah. Everyone got to hear me say Reacher, the sexiest man alive.
Hello. Yeah, I'm sorry. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Horror Dork, where we ask, when you're traveling across the very hot area of Texas in a shaggin' wagon with your friends, should you go check out the local wildlife? And by
Should you pick
wildlife,
up hitchhikers?
should you pick up hitchhikers? It was a different time when you could pick up a hitchhiker, and yeah, maybe he's got a straight razor in his boot, and maybe he wants to play with your knife.
He's a silly goose.
But I mean, really, it was hot out there. He could have asphyxiated. Anyways,
All right.
I'm Golden.
Hello, welcome to Horror Dork. I'm Mr. Sir.
I'm Anthony, and we got quite the show for you today. Just trying
Woo!
to raise energy a little bit. So
Yeah, you need to do that with me.
we're going to be talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre
The Texas
1974.
Chainsaw Massacre.
The original,
And
based on a true story.
just to give you a synopsis, if you don't know, you don't know, I guess, but it's just about a few kids that have a very terrifying experience when they stumble across a violent family of sorts.
I feel like if you've never heard of Texas Chainsaw
Well, they
Massacre,
probably have heard of it.
then you accidentally stumbled on this podcast because you're not going to something called Horror Dork and going, "What's this Texas Chainsaw Massacre I've heard something about just
Well,
now?"
this movie is like considered like one of the all-time like modern classic horror movies. It's definitely like, I don't know if it's a slasher because it doesn't really fit that mold, but it is more like a country gothic horror kind of thing.
It's very 70s.
Yeah.
Like you don't watch this movie and go, "I wonder what decade this was made in." Just
No,
the feel alone.
It has
is
a
70s.
definitely like feel, look, everything like
rhyme.
yeah. It's a very gritty movie. Has that 70s feel about it. So what,
And being able to pick up hitchhikers.
Golden, what's your relationship with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
I thought you were gonna ask me what my relationship was with the Sawyer family. I was like, wow, I'm just gonna already go for that, huh?
When did you join the clan? And
I
not
was
the
born
clan,
into it.
but the Sawyer clan.
Yeah, don't get it.
Different. We don't know if they're racist because they it seems like they'll just eat anybody indiscriminately.
Yeah, I think they're just
Yeah.
They love people. I mean,
Mostly the way they taste with barbecue
Mostly.
sauce.
yeah,
but-
absolutely. It's important.
Yeah. So what's your relationship with this film? Like, do you remember the first time you saw it, or
I mean, it was definitely when I was younger and
saw it in the drive-in?
I didn't see it on the drive. My parents were not horror fans, so I was never. I don't think I saw any horror movies in theaters until I was
Yeah.
like old enough to take myself and not have to get permission.
And there's a few movies that have just like the most horror movie title ever, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of them.
Yeah,
It's
you're-
like one of those movies that has, it's like, you know what the movie's gonna, you know what kind of movie you're getting into by the title of it.
You're not tricking your parents into being like, "Yeah, I want to go see this movie," and it's got this like nice little title, and then they're like, "Why would you watch that?" This one's like,
Texas Chainsaw
Can I go see Texas Chainsaw Massacre? No.
So continue with your story about your first experience with it. You were old enough then. We got to the point where you're old enough to
I was old enough to rent it from the local. I mean, I know that doesn't say much, saying I was old enough to rent it from the local.
were you
rental
old enough
place.
to get your senior
They-
discount at that point?
I was not, but it's like it's one of those where like they as long as you're not trying to go into that special room with the curtains, they really don't care what you rent. 'Cause they
Yes.
like, oh, your parents will let you come in here.
What's that?
The special, it's the porn.
Yeah.
It's all the porn.
That's the one with
It's the coveted room that you want to go into, and then you
Filthy
finally get
Ass
into it.
Fuckers 8.
Yeah, you finally get into
That's
it.
a
And you're
real
like,
movie.
I've
oh.
seen 1 through 7, so
That's a real
I'm like-
movie.
Well,
yes.
will I be missing out on this important storyline?
Granny Shaggers.
Lube it or lose it.
All right, keep going.
No, that was actually a subtitle of one of the porns that was accidentally returned to Hollywood Video when I worked there. It was like
Lube it or lose
lube
it?
it or lose it, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna take this home and see exactly what it's all about. It was okay.
Guy lost his penis.
There was a woman who
He
had
lost his dick. It just
like,
came right off.
the worst boob job I've ever seen. They were like almost square.
Cautionary tale.
They were almost square. Like it was bad. And then she kept staring into the camera and moaning. It was bad. There was production value. It was not what I've come to expect from good porn. But no, I rented it with friends, and because we always try to get like some classics too. We tried to get weird ones that like the ones that came in that weird clamshell.
Yeah.
That's how you knew it was a mark of quality, that you were going to watch something that was made for like $20. It cost you more to rent it than their budget was. We would get like those, and then we would like try to get classics, and it was just it's like one of those things where you watch it and afterwards you just feel like you need a shower. I feel like because it's just such a grimy feeling. Like, I mean, obviously you don't go through as much as the cast went through for that filming, but you feel like you went through just about as bad. Like you just feel like you're like, oh
yeah. There's a desperation that comes off this movie that just it's tough to fake something like that.
yeah.
And it's
Apparently the key is to make your cast go through hell in real life.
I mean, well, that's low budget filmmaking in general. Like, and when you're making a movie of like the kind of movie that Toby Hooper wanted to make, and you have to just have like dedicated people that want that vision to come to the screen as well.
Right.
What's yours, Anthony?
I don't even remember because I've seen it.
He's like, you guys said you wanted to watch it. You guys said you wanted to watch it, so I watched it this morning.
The first time I seen Halloween, I don't know, the first time I seen Halloween was on TV. I don't think I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on TV.
I definitely didn't.
I can't remember the first time I watched this.
Yeah, I don't either, because I definitely probably had a similar thing with Golden, is that I rented it. But when I first saw it, who knows? Like, I really don't know when I first saw it. It was like a very formative film for me, though. Like, after I saw it, I was like, well, I know what like a true scary horror movie looks like. Like, this is, I mean, there's scenes in this movie where it's tough. Like, it looks like a documentary like film. It looks documentary style, and it's just it really adds to the atmosphere of the movie.
So there's a few films that changed the face of modern horror, and this is argued
Changed
in
the leather face of it.
film critic circles. The third one being the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the two before, which I'm sure you guys will agree with, is Night of the Living Dead, and
Rosemary's Baby.
Last House on the Left.
Oh, gotcha.
It's like Rosemary's Baby, slow burn.
I mean, yeah,
I think
that one actually is a slow burn.
I think Psycho was like,
yeah, it is.
And it really is. It's a super slow burn.
Yeah, as far as like changing the landscape of like the horror genre, Psycho is arguably a good one, but I don't think it really changed anything until these indie movies started coming out, when New Wave hit Hollywood with movies like Easy Rider and stuff. And
that's fair.
And Night of the Living Dead came out before Easy Rider, but still, you got this whole new wave coming in where indie movies coming in. Big studios are now kind of not the only thing that can produce movies in Hollywood and stuff, at least for the American audiences.
Like, were there, before Night of the Living Dead, were there zombies other than the voodoo idea of
that
zombies?
That is a great question, and one that is kind of argued that I'd have to.
Yeah, like
I'd have to brush up on before I can answer that question, honestly, because
I don't do that. I just like throw out whatever I feel like is right.
Yeah, because I think that
there's arguably, I don't think there was an American release. Man, that's just going back a while now, because I haven't like read anything about zombie films since like 2012. I feel like.
Right. Yeah. Same. Like, when I would have learned about it would probably be listening to like commentary tracks for Night of the Living Dead, or one of the many Night of the Living Dead DVDs that I own that have like documentaries and stuff.
I feel like there were like flesh-eating ghouls before, but I can't remember.
Right. Sure. And they're not called zombies in Night of the Living Dead either. They are called ghouls.
Yeah.
Now, is there any movie
kill the brain, kill
that
the
is
ghoul,
like more often than Night of the Living Dead that is shown on TVs in horror movies?
Oh, definitely not.
It's such public domain.
Cliche.
Yeah.
Right, which I get, but it's like that always kills me when I'm watching a movie and then they're like, "Oh, we're watching Night of the Living Dead."
And it had such a huge impact on the genre.
It did.
I mean, that's going to be your best budget for adding production value to your movie,
right.
You know.
But it also is like one of those things where if your movie sucks, you're like, "Why are you showing me this good movie in your bad movie?" You always run the risk of having that comparison too. It can either add, production value, or it can just give a stark contrast to what you're watching
Look,
already.
they had $20 to make this, and it looks way better than yours. And like I
I
think,
mean, but it's
Right.
George Romero.
oh no, I'm not. I'm not down. I'm not dogging like
Yeah,
Night of
yeah,
Living
yeah.
Dead. I'm saying like the movies that are really bad that show it in there. Like to go with what you were saying, it's like in
Right.
comparison. I feel like because talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I feel like if there was a college course, and I'm sure there is a college course out there about horror movies.
You think there's a college course out there?
I'm sure there is. There's one, at least one. I've heard of this
There's
thing
a
called
college.
college.
out there, Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of
Um,
colleges.
if there
before.
was like
So
a-
they must
I
have
saw
courses.
the shirt. I saw Animal House.
If there was like a college course on, or let's say you could get a degree in horror movies, I feel like Texas Chainsaw Massacre would be in the horror movie 101
Yeah.
course.
Well, I feel like that's in
You-
just
if you're gonna be a
Cinema
horror
101.
movie
Definitely, like,
fan, you have to
In
watch
like
this.
in
Screen
like
studies,
the,
whatever, you
tell not show kind of thing. Like let the audience let the audience finish the picture.
I
in their
feel
head.
like if this movie's being shown in colleges, and not just to play devil's advocate here, but I feel like it's
Why would you?
shown for like how to use metaphors in film.
or like what do you think you saw versus what you
I
actually
see, like
saw?
I don't, because like that's something like we would focus on as being like horror fans and stuff.
It's a
I-
film school kind of thing.
Yeah,
I would
but
imagine.
I don't feel like they would use
Bougie.
this as an example of that. Just personally, myself, even though it is a great example, I just, from my experience, I feel
Would
like
use
stuff
something
gets
else,
too
yeah.
artsy fartsy,
True.
and they're really going to focus on the artiste aspect of this movie,
Right.
which goes into like the Vietnam War,
but,
and
like,
vegetarianism,
when
and
you-
stuff we don't want to talk about today.
Yeah, when you talk to like an average person who's watched this movie before, or they watched it forever ago or heard about it, they either assume or wrongly believe that they saw like graphic, horrible things happen in this
For
movie
sure,
that
for sure.
just is implied, but is never like explicitly shown.
Yeah, the I can't remember his last name, who plays the hitchhiker. I remember him talking before, and it might have been on one of the special features of one of the DVDs. Him saying about the hook part, like he bet like 10 people, and he won every single bet that they swore the hook went through.
Oh, the front of her.
Yeah, when Leatherface
And
hung
they
her on
stuck
the hook.
Mandela effect.
Man, that would have been an effect to do in 1974.
Well, actually, and I remember Toby Hooper talking about this. Golden brought up earlier when we were just chatting before the podcast about how, or maybe it was you, someone was talking about how Toby Hooper wanted to get a PG rating so he could show it on
Oh,
TV.
yeah.
Well, he wanted to see, he asked the MPAA, this is what Toby Hooper asked, he asked the MPAA how he could get a PG rating at first, and then they said it with him putting someone on a hook, and then they said that was impossible, and then so he's like, well, how do I get an R rating? And so that's why he decided,
Because it was getting X ratings.
and
Right.
I'm forgetting the names. The guy who did the special effects and like a lot of like the set design and stuff for the movie told Toby Hooper, according to him, don't show it going through her chest. It'll be way more powerful anyways if you don't show that.
Yeah, it was the right move.
Yeah.
Because like if you show it and the effect looks bad, you're like, well, that
Takes you
I
right out
know
of
that's
it.
fake. But you see just her reaction to the and just frozen in like pain.
Well, yeah,
and
she
shock.
apparently
Do that again
used-
because I felt like I was watching the movie.
Well, apparently because she used
It's
the
actually
real
pretty good.
pain that she was in to motivate that scene, because like the setup they had, they put like they had nylon cords between her legs,
Stockings
nylon stockings, and they put
around her
maxi
waist,
pads,
around her chest.
They put
yeah.
maxi pads under them to like hold the
so it wouldn't
relieve some
dig
of the
into her
pain.
skin. Yeah.
But they weren't working, so she said she was in a lot of pain, and she decided just to use that. To
Yeah,
really.
yeah.
So she was in real pain,
Well.
being hung up by her.
Yeah, and they had a
Hurts.
wire attached to the back for like the harness part of it, and they turned the hook backwards.
Yeah.
This was something a lot of people don't realize.
Just so you didn't have an oopsie moment. Nope. Well, a good thing we did this in one take, 'cause she did.
Well,
Well, could you imagine that? Anyways, it'd be like poking in your back. Even like if it didn't have an oopsie moment, that'd still be even more uncomfortable than it probably already was.
It's just 100 degree. over 100 degrees in Texas in summer. It's okay to. I'm sure everybody was
There in
super
July
comfortable.
is
I mean,
nuts.
the one thing that I've read, any interview I've read, and anybody that talked about being on the set of that, it was a very comfortable set to be in. Like,
Yeah,
air
there was no
conditioned, and nice
problem.
breeze. It wasn't like super hot. Everybody didn't stink to hell.
But it is also like
Being
an
sarcastic.
independent. Yeah, like horrible.
Extremely. Apparently, it was funny too
Horrible.
because I like always like when you hear about the conditions on set and because first of all the 70s was clearly a lawless wasteland when it came to movie sets, but I'll get into that again later. But like you hear about all the stuff on Texas Chainsaw Massacre was insane heat, disgusting smells and everything. Then you like read the stuff on like Evil Dead. The first Evil Dead was the opposite. It was horribly cold all the time. And like
Yeah.
so all the blood was
in Michigan or
sugar water
Tennessee.
basically.
Yeah.
And so like Bruce Campbell was obviously covered in fake blood. And then it's cold. He hung up his shirt in front of a space heater, and since it's all sugar, it crystallized the shirt, and the shirt actually broke because it was
God.
just so cold. Because they just
Yeah.
found like this old destroyed cabin in the middle of Tennessee in the winter, and like let's just film here. So there's no heat. Like there was cow shit everywhere because like cows had moved into the cabin.
And they're wearing like moccasins and stuff because Sam Raimi was like, "Well, I don't want modern shoes in it because I want it to be like have like a timeless quality." So like you watch it, and Bruce Campbell's like wearing moccasins and shit. So that cannot be very warm either. You know, they're not wearing boots or anything. They're
Like, can you
crazy.
imagine though just working on a movie set in the 70s, like because nowadays there's so many things that like obviously you want the actors aren't human, so you want them to be somewhat comfortable. Like there's all these things, but like if you watch these 70s movies and you hear about it, like there was, oh, you want to be in a movie, then you're just gonna we might kill you.
Or like
Oops.
shit like the French Connection where they're just filming stuff without permits and there's car chases that they're in that movie
That
that
still
are.
happens today.
I mean, yeah, but it's you don't really get away with doing that stuff.
Not
as
in
much.
LA, but
There was a movie we watched during one of the bad movie nights. I would think it was called like Rise of the Animals or something like that. It was the
Oh my
1970s.
God, yes,
Oh,
yes,
Leslie
yes.
Nielsen was
Roar
in
or
it
something.
before he was.
Roar.
That's the name
No,
of the
no.
movie?
This
That's
was like
Where the
different
animals
movie.
maul
this
people.
was like
Yeah, yeah.
well, this was one of the
Day of
many
the
in the
Animal?
70s, but it was
Yeah.
like Day of the Animal, right? Something.
Day of the
Day of the
Animals
Animals.
is the movie.
Leslie
I'm thinking of.
Nielsen was in
Yes.
it before he was comedic, even though he had very comedic parts of this unintentionally. But like, there's a scene where the person's walking into this town and there's dogs on the roof of every house, and then the dogs jump down, but you can tell these dogs didn't want to jump down. These dogs were pushed onto a slanted roof, slanted metal roof, so they just slid down. So like how like if a dog's like trying to run down to get something and jump, is a different motion than the like it was. It was like trying to not fall off a roof, and I'm like, fucking 70s, man.
Well, yeah, you watch Milo and Otis, and that's just like a cat snuff film.
Yeah.
They're just like throwing cats into the river and filming it. Like legit, not.
Speaking of dead animals, that's a great segue back into Texas Chainsaw Massacre because
That chicken room.
I can't remember her name. I think it's Dorothy or whoever. She did a lot of the makeup on the movie, and I think they called her Dolly or whatever. So they decided, there's the stories about them using like the head cheese and the meat and all that stuff, and then she had a friend or something that worked in a veterinarian clinic, and so the animals that they would put down, like the cats and dogs, she brought a bunch of dogs back to the house to put in the movie. No snakes. And she was injecting them with formaldehyde. And she went through the dog's leg into her own leg and gave herself a pop of formaldehyde. So after that, they decided not to use it. And this gets even worse because they decided to burn. They had to get rid of. They had like tons and tons and tons of these dead dogs. So they had to. So they burned them outside while they were shooting that 26-hour horrendous.
Oh Jesus!
So like
God.
That's
And
why
that
you
room
hear about
was-
all these people puking. It's not just because of the bad smell of the meat sitting in front of their faces and Gunnar Hansen stinking to high heaven. They also had burning dogs outside, and the smoke was wafting into
Good
the.
God.
Just the dog
And
bonfire.
getting on, and not just that, getting on all the clothes and everything. Gunnar Hansen had one shirt, so not only is it smelling from everything that he's running around in the woods,
And he's
with
not a
this
small
stuff.
guy.
No,
He's huge. He's
and they
a
were
big
already
guy.
shooting
for a
10 to
reason.
12-hour days before that.
Yeah, and like, so then on top of that, you just have this smoke that is definitely getting on your clothes. So everybody's clothes smells like dead dog, burning
Yeah.
dead dog now too.
Yeah.
Ugh, God,
And in over 100 degree.
awful.
107,
100 was outside, and that 107 was outside, right?
Yeah, and it was like
So
five. It was
inside
probably like
was way
110 to
more.
115
Oof.
degrees inside.
Like, and I don't do well in the heat as it is. I would just fucking pass out, and then I'm like, well, we dead.
Well,
Recast them.
imagine being the grandpa who's in that makeup. He literally sat for almost 20 hours in that makeup. They only had 2 or
Wow.
3 of those prosthetic masks to make.
Yeah.
And
They
it's a
hired like a
good-looking
plastic
mask, too.
surgeon to do the prosthetics for that movie, and he wasn't a special effects guy, so he really that once they used that makeup, they weren't going to be able to reuse it.
No, you wouldn't be able to recreate like
Well, also
the exact look.
the
of-
actor said, "I won't do this again." After he sat in the chair for 5 hours to get the thing, so they're like, "Well, guess we're filming it all now."
Well, not, and it wasn't just like the conditions and everything didn't make this tough. Like other stuff, like that seemed to be done like just by like amateur filmmaker stuff, just dangerous filmmaking. Like Gunnar Hansen's chainsaw. He's Leatherface. He's running through the woods. This thing is running with a blade in it.
Yeah, it has the teeth on it. So normally in this type of situation, because this is a great story, normally in this type of situation, you'd have a stunt coordinator or some kind of stunt person that was
Yes.
overseeing this, and it just wasn't the case. And he's running, and normally it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but they had to make him do this. I mean, yeah, you'd never do this today, where you would have someone run with a chainsaw.
Absolutely
So
not.
when I say it normally wouldn't be a big deal, I mean like they probably weren't as worried about it as they should have been, because they weren't thinking about the fact that he was going to turn when he was chasing her. And he had these 3-inch cowboy boots. Well, they added these, like you said, the platform and the heel
Yes, they had
onto
a-
these cowboy boots. And he was thinking he could dig the heels into the dirt and just pivot. And he said when he did that, he's running full speed with this chainsaw that has the teeth on it. He runs, digs his heels in, and pivots, and his feet come out from under him, and the chainsaw goes flying up in the air. And he said he just covered his head and waited for the worst. And luckily, the chainsaw missed him and landed next to him.
Yeah, and I mean, he's running through the woods. It's dark. He's got these boots on, and you can get a good look at like what we're talking about when you watch the movie. And it's the part where Leatherface first shows up. He hits the guy in the head and drags him away. You can see the boots that he's wearing. These suckers are like that. He's got heels on these bad boys. He's running through the woods. It's muddy, and you got to keep in mind he's also wearing this mask on his face
Yeah.
that it covers up his whole head, so he can barely see anything to begin with. And the girl that plays Sally is significantly slower, is running slower than him. So he's also doing all this work by trying not to catch up to her. And so, yeah, it looks awesome. Don't get me wrong. It looks incredible. I'm glad they did it. I wish they did it a little safer, so Gunnar Hansen almost didn't get decapitated playing Leatherface.
And to add on to the point of the danger of running with the boots, when you see him chasing Sally, right before she comes in the house, they run through, like, she turns and runs through this fence, and he's running behind her, and you'll see Leatherface, he'll, like, kind of skitter or slide in the dirt, because that's the only way he would be able to turn and run after her. After he slipped with the chainsaw, he wasn't.
Oh yeah,
Risking
no. Yeah, I don't blame him at all.
I do like it was funny because like when I was watching it, and you think about things, and I like one thing that they did in this movie, where when the one girl was getting chased through the house, and she gets into the one room and has zero hesitation and just dives through the window.
Yeah,
I'm like, fine, yeah, I like seeing that because that to me is more realistic. Like, because usually in a lot of the movies, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, and they'll like try to find this other option, and it's like if you're being chased by a huge dude with a chainsaw and wearing skin on his face, other people's skin on his face, you don't look for other options. You just see that window and go, hell yeah, escape.
I mean, at this
Just
point, she knows her friends are dead, and she's about to be dead. The only thing that didn't stop her from being killed is the family's insistence on Grandpa being the one that does it. And Grandpa is 9,000 years old, and he can only the only thing that he seems to be able to do is suck on blood from her finger, which was haunting.
And
It's
was
so
real.
gross. Yeah.
So there's 2
Because
points I want to touch
the
on.
fake thing that they had, the tube, because I read the thing that said that they had like a tube set up for fake blood to come out of her finger, and it kept clogging and it kept not working till they just slashed her finger.
I was
open.
gonna say, because when I was watching it, I was like, man, that looks like they actually caught her. And I guess they
There's 3 points I want to touch upon.
sure.
So going off what you just said, this is a third point that I added on. The delirium that was created through this extensive dinner scene is 26 hours in like blistering heat. Ed will talk about it. Gunnar will talk about it, where you have all these people kind of rooting you on as you doing like more and more evil things, and it's late in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock when they're finally getting to these parts. And they said there's just like this dark side that kind of took over, where they kind of lost the reality between, and this is me putting in my own words. You need to watch some of the special features like The Shocking Truth and I can't remember the name of the other documentary.
Under the Flesh, it's something like that.
That one, but that's a good one too. Anyways, they're both free on Tubi at last I checked.
Okay, yeah,
They should still be there.
And by the way, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is streaming like pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
Tubi, Screenbox.
People watching this
Shudder.
probably already own it anyways, multiple versions like us. And so like this is me putting my own words. The delirium kind of took over, where they were actually hurting her, and and Ed talks about this point where the ropes are so tight on Sally's skin, and she's gagged and she can't say anything, and he can see the skin separating and bleeding because the ropes are so tight, and he actually had to like snap out of it and be like, whoa, wait a minute here, like this is going too far. And there's a part where he just really whacks her. I think it was Gunnar or someone, because they just wanted to get the scene over with, and everyone's yelling, kill the bitch, kill the bitch, kill the bitch.
Yeah, and I think you see that in the movie, because there's a spot where it hits her in the head, and
You
I'm
can
like,
see the blood. Yeah,
I'm like, wow, that actually hit her. That looks, and that does not. It's not a prop.
Well, there have been a few like studies on things like that. Like there's one I remember where they took this group of people and just separated them into prisoners.
The Stanford
and
prison
wardens.
experiment.
Yeah, and like they watched it just, and it's crazy. Like then if you add in that heat and all that stuff, yeah. I mean,
that's a cool video. There's a bunch of videos about it on YouTube.
Yeah.
The Stanford prison experience.
I watched a movie about it.
And then there's that more recent video too thing that I was seeing was the art thing that a person did where she stood there in front of a table of items, and it just said, you can do whatever you want to me with no repercussions. I won't stop it, blah blah blah. And they said it started off with people would be like rubbing a rose against her skin until it got to the point where like it was getting brutal. Like one guy held the loaded gun up to her head and everybody thought they were gonna kill her, and it's just crazy. Like with the brain all of a sudden.
There's also that experiment they used in Ghostbusters.
There was where they just kept
the
shocking.
shock therapy,
yeah,
and see if people would actually
so
shock
Peter
them if they were
Venkman
told to do it.
So Peter Venkman could get different one.
Yeah, but I mean, it was based off of that essentially.
Yeah. The psychic abilities, and the guy picks
Not the
the
psychic
right
abilities.
one. I know. Yeah.
Where they hooked the people up to electric shock therapy and said they had to shock them.
Yes.
Just to see if people would actually do it.
Also during like that dinner scene, real quick, I want to like I just started laughing to myself so hard when they first showed her, and because I was like, oh, she's in an armchair. I just wanted to bring it up because I just thought about that too. Because there were the arms of the chair were actual human arms, so I just started laughing. And I'm like, she's in an armchair. Hee hee.
That's part of the based on a true story stuff. Is Ed Gein? Yeah, Ed Gein had all sorts of like furniture, and he had like a nipple belt. Like legitimately a belt made out of nipples.
Yeah,
I mean, you can look this stuff up.
That's where the inspiration comes from for this movie when they say it's based off of Ed Gein. It's not based off Ed Gein. Toby Hooper's parents or something. Man, this is going back years when I watched this interview, but I think it was on Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, the disc. He's talking about how his in-laws would come, not in-laws, but relatives would come from Wisconsin and tell him stories about Ed Gein and just scare the living shit out of him.
And another inspiration for this movie was I believe he was Christmas shopping, and he was in Sears or like one of those big department stores, and there's a gigantic line in front of him, and he was in the hardware area, and he sees a chainsaw, and he's like, man, if I could just cut this thing on, I could just mow down all these people. And that was like sort of like, that would be a good thing for a horror movie, is a chainsaw. And then that kind of like from there, it just kind of turned into the idea.
Now chainsaws have become just iconic in horror movies.
Oh yeah. I mean, and not even just Leatherface.
But this movie,
Evil
kinda
Dead
made
2.
chainsaw synonymous with
Yes.
horror.
Yeah. Like, wow, an instrument of pain and
So
like.
do you think, like, for this family, that the cemetery that they were talking about in the beginning was like their IKEA? they just went and they got a bunch of the parts and they brought it home and just put them together. Like, these faces would make a hell of a
Clearly
lampshade.
it's-
That's what Nubbin
It's Hitchhiker
said.
that's
Yeah,
bringing
Nubbin
all this
said it.
stuff
He's
back.
like, "Oh, you idiot! You took they didn't catch me.
I told
They
you to
didn't
stay
catch
away
me."
from that graveyard.
Also, I don't give a shit if it's the
I love that
70s and
guy.
people are more likely to pick up hitchhikers. If I see a guy walking down the side of the road with a
cook.
dead animal as a purse around his neck, I'm gonna go, "Nah, we can keep going. Let him die out there. I don't care."
So there's oh man, I think it was the
There was a man, yes.
audio design. No, it wasn't the audio guy. Somebody was talking about how the opening shot was originally like the sun setting, like the Texas sun setting, and it cut to like a dead dog's eye, people of a dead dog's eye, and then zoomed out from there on the side of the road. And then they were looking to go shooting, and this is in the very beginning of the movie. This is super interesting. They're shooting in the beginning of the movie, and he says they found the perfect shot. On the side of the road is this dead horse that got hit by a car, and there's flies all around it. But Toby Hooper and I can't remember the writer's name right now. They didn't want to shoot it because they didn't want to get close to it because of the smell and all that stuff. So he actually, the guy that told the story, he had a stuffed armadillo that supposedly Toby Hooper, which you see in the opening shot, is an armadillo upside down. It's that stuffed armadillo he has. And he thought it was the most ridiculously dumb shot in the world, especially since they had that horse shot they refused to take. And he said Toby Hooper wanted to run over his armadillo with his car or whatever and have it like crushed and guts coming out of it. He's like, "You're not running over my stuffed armadillo, man. It's just not happening." And then it cuts to Toby Hooper. He's like, "I don't remember that. I would never run over the armadillo." I'm sorry if I did suggest that.
It's like straight out of Scrooge.
So-
just staple the antlers on the
Yeah.
mouse.
Okay. Anyways, second point I want to touch upon was how you're talking about when Sally jumps out the window. So when they were shooting the scene, it was a sugar glass window, and she honestly just wanted to jump out it down to the floor, but they were so worried about it being near the end of the film that they didn't want her getting hurt. So what they had her do instead is they put 6 foot scaffolding up and had her jump off that. So when you see her land, she actually twists her ankle, and when she's being chased by a hitchhiker at the end, she's limping because of that shot where she's like, if they would have just let me jump out the window, it probably would have been 10 times better, and I wouldn't have hurt my ankle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, she must have been actually hurt because how she runs away is so slow. I'm like, and you can tell Nubbins is like struggling to not catch up to her.
Yeah.
I'll tell you too, like,
He's like, how much am I gonna
That's another
take
interesting
not
thing
get
too,
grabbing
is
her?
in the script it said he was supposed to grab her, but he just ad-libbed him slicing her with the razor as she's running away, which is so cool.
Yeah,
It's such
yeah.
a great moment for that character.
like I can tell you too, like, now that I finally got a chance to work with sugar glass, it's crazy. Like, because I mean, I've always heard of it. They use sugar glass and special stuff. I was filming a movie with friends of mine as the villain. I was the killer, but they had a scene. It was the stunt day, which was by far my favorite day because now I got to do stunt stuff, and usually when we do our movies, I do all my own stunts, just because if I'm going to put anybody in jeopardy, it's going to be me.
Yeah. You were
So
inspired
this is
by
the time
Jackie
that-
Chan growing up.
Right, pretty much. Yeah, and but this time it was the other person, the person whose movie this was the one in actual possible jeopardy from different things, and one of them was
Unsafe stunts.
well, not unsafe. They were very safe because he made sure of it, but it's still, of the two of us, which of us is more likely to get hurt? Me throwing him through a wall or him going through the wall, But they had
You picking up something.
they had sugar glass they had sugar glass bottles, and somebody had told them, the best way to use the sugar glass bottle is to put a little bit of water in it because you don't want it to be like an empty bottle just shattering. So there's a little bit of water in it. We have the scene set up. We're running 2 cameras to get the shots, and we have 3 sugar glass bottles, and they're super expensive. And one of the big expenses too is like shipping, because they're so fragile.
Oh, you had them shipped in. That's cool.
They had them shipped in. I mean, I just got to play with these, but so they're sitting there, they're putting the bottle there, and I'm like, just being super careful not to just crush it in my hand, because it looks and feels like a real bottle. So you feel like that grip is,
He is actually talking about this isn't like
listen, this is about to
talking
get to
about
that point.
anything else.
So I line up the shot, I just smash it, just overhand smash across his head. And the sound and the feel was so realistic.
All right.
I thought I grabbed the wrong bottle. I thought it was a real bottle. So I'm like, as soon as I hear cut, I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? Did I just do that? And everybody's like, oh my God, that came out so great. And I'm like, it
Would
was.
have been on the ground with blood
was-
just pouring.
I did not
That would have been a
hold
real
blood.
Evil Dead moment, grabbing a real bottle.
Because I made sure, I kept making sure, I had the right angle, because it's a sugar glass bottle, but it's a real fist. So if I'm off the mark and I just punch him across the face, when I'm also trying to use as much force as possible to make sure it breaks and make sure it looks right, you don't want to look like you're hesitating. So I'm just like, okay, we got to make sure we're lined up just right. But then it's funny because it's a horror comedy, and so they worked up a little bit, and the way they decided to work up a little bit more of the comedy worked out nice for the fact that we're lining it up, because I actually line up. I got him there. He's pretty much dazed, and I take the time to line him up perfectly for the shot. So that worked out, because then I actually got to line him up perfectly, so I wasn't just right hooking him across the face. And it was an awesome day, though. I'll tell you what, I want to do more throwing people through walls, preferably in a movie setting. But I mean, if we have to do it through a real wall, we can do it.
Okay.
How are these walls?
That's fun. That sounds like a fun experience.
Was.
So the second point I wanted to make,
You already said the second.
way back when, like a half hour ago, just kidding, is the grandfather in the script is supposed to be going through this embryonic stage of his soul, where he's so old that he's starting to reverse the aging process. That's why he's acting like a little kid when he's getting the blood and stuff, which to me is so interesting. And I would love to see a sequel where he's actually becoming more capable and actually doing the killing, because the grandfather is such an iconic look to him,
Right.
And I heard in Japan, and there was another country where that's what they feature on the poster. The character is the grandpa rather than Leatherface.
Really?
Well, that's the thing, though,
I
too.
mean, that's a really, like I said, that mask looks really cool. It's a cool looking. It looks like a mummy old man.
And that's the thing with the sequels. Yes, you got to have Leatherface. You have to for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre sequel. I don't want to watch a movie without Leatherface.
Right.
For Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
He's no, any movie.
However-
Disney,
But you
Pixar,
need
if
the
I don't see
grandfather-
Texas Chain,
you
if I
need
don't
the
see
grandfather
Leatherface.
too. And I know that Jim, that Sadao or whatever that played the cook, he can't, obviously that's not going to happen, but you almost kind of need the cook too.
Yeah, you need a guy like that.
Because he's the straight man for the group.
Yeah, and that's a problem with some of the later ones. The second one has Cook is in that, but it also has Chop Top, who's
Right.
like a hitchhiker adjacent.
Yeah.
But then you have the other ones, and there's really no straight gut man in that.
Because what happens is they give it to you with the Next Generation and Leatherface, where you have Viggo Mortensen and
Matthew
kind of a little bit of a
McConaughey.
spoiler, but and Matthew McConaughey in Next Generation, but then they go nuts towards the end.
Yeah. They all, yeah, especially
Did
Matthew
he have-
doesn't go nuts.
Matthew McConaughey, like, is hamming it the
Yeah.
fuck up.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, yeah,
It's
is-
great.
with his battery powered
really
That
legs.
movie's watchable because of his performance.
Yeah. And I mean, Renee Zellweger is the final girl,
And they
she's
buried that
pretty
film
good.
because they didn't think Renee Zellweger or Matthew McConaughey was going to be a big star. We'll talk about it when we get to the Next Generation.
Oh, yeah. We'll talk.
And then
heavily
after
about
Jerry
that.
Maguire came out, they're like, oh, well, we got to put this out as Renee Zellweger in it. And then Matthew McConaughey's agency that represented him sued the company because they didn't want. They said it was like a defamation of character or something, and they
How
can't.
dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you advertise that my actor was in your
Well,
movie?
like they said, like you can't exploit an actor just because he's a famous star now. It's like what
Like,
Hollywood does it all the time.
Yeah.
that's
Once Bitten, Once Bitten came out and everything, and I loved that movie. And then all of a sudden, when Jim Carrey became famous, they re-released it and
Oh,
they
yeah.
released the cover because the original cover was more Lauren Hutton, right? Was it Lauren Hutton? Or
I don't remember.
whoever was the main woman from Once Bitten? She was prominent on the cover with a small
You're asking
picture
me
of
to
Jim Carrey.
remember somebody from Once Bitten
Yes.
that isn't Jim Carrey.
Listen, Once Bitten was amazing, but like he was like barely on the cover, and then he became famous, and all of a sudden it was the main thing was him and her. Like he was all over
well,
it, and they do it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, like the Mazes and Monsters, that that anti Dungeons and Dragons movie that stars Tom Hanks, when the Da Vinci, like they would do that all the time with movie when they would put stuff out on
Do what?
DVD. They like Mazes and Monsters is like this anti Dungeons and Dragons propaganda movie from the 80s starring Tom Hanks. When the Da Vinci Code was coming out, when they put out Mazes and whatever company owns Mazes and Monsters, when they put that out on DVD, it made it look like the Da Vinci Code.
Well,
Like it had that kind of
Yeah.
thing on it where they're trying to trick you.
Well, like even look
into-
at Knockaround Guys. They made Knockaround Guys. They never released it because they're like, oh, this doesn't have star power. When it had John Malkovich,
Yeah, we've
It-
talked
like, it
about
was-
this
and
extensively.
then all this,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden they're like, guys, everybody loves Vin Diesel. We can finally release this movie with all these other stars in it that everybody loved before. But now they're like, oh, Vin Diesel's big. Put him in there. And it's like, I mean, it was a good movie and I liked it, but I'm just like, it had a lot of stars in it to be like, oh, well, now that Vin Diesel has been doing Fast and the Furious.
Can't remember what the name of the movie is, but there's one where they like the people successfully like stop the movie from coming out, and it has like it's got Leonardo DiCaprio, it's got like all those like that era of those guys in it. Like they're all friends with each other too.
What's
the
Eating
hell
Gilbert
is
Grape?
it? It's not a movie that was released.
Stand By
And
Me.
it's like all the guys like hanging out in a diner bullshitting, and it's like, oh, who the fuck else isn't? Why am I blanking on this shit? It's really pissing me off. It's got like it's all those like DiCaprio, the Pussy Posse guys, and it's Spider-Man is in that one. It's all those guys, but that movie never came out because it was awful, and DiCaprio's people stopped it from coming out. But you can watch it on YouTube.
So someone mentioned earlier about this being relevant to the slasher genre. I think that's hard to say, like, because when you think about how do you measure if something's relevant to the slasher genre, does it incorporate a staple that hasn't been done before? And second, the
Yes, that's it. Don's Plum is that movie.
do
I was
the
thinking of.
movies in the genre that create the subgenre, are they made because that movie was made? So like if you look at Friday the 13th, you know, because a lot of people argue Black Christmas and Halloween, which was the first slasher, and
Black Christmas is for sure.
there's others, but does Halloween get made without Black Christmas? I don't know, because John Carpenter was in contact with wow, brain fart.
Peeping Tom is another one that people say.
Well, it because you get the POV shots of the killer and stuff.
It's more of a Giallo
why,
kind of thing.
why can't I think of the name? Please help me. The guy who wrote and directed
Bob
Christmas
Clark.
Story. Yeah.
Bob Clark.
John Carpenter was at least in contact with him because he was making like a holiday horror movie. So does Halloween happen? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't become Halloween. Maybe it is a babysitter murder. I don't know. But anyways, does Halloween and Black Christmas get made without the Texas Chainsaw Massacre existing?
That's a tough one. Like I'm not sure. Like it's
And this is all speculation. Like, don't take what we're saying as like
I don't think
gold truth.
I don't look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a slasher film in my mind.
Okay, but what about the final girl aspect? Because this is one of the first movies to have a final girl. It may be the first movie.
Yeah, but I still
But is that relevant only to the slasher genre? It's not.
it's not, no. And that's the thing, is like I feel like, to me, in my mind, the slasher genre is a single lurking unstoppable killer. Not
Does it have to be?
like, to me it does. I'm not saying like that.
What about Scream?
It's still, Ghostface is the character. He might be played by multiple people, but it's still
So he's
one
unstoppable in the aspect that he
unstoppable
lives on. But what about Leatherface?
but he's still part of a family. To me, that goes into a different subgenre that has like Wrong Turn.
So Wrong
like
Turn
that.
isn't a slasher?
Okay.
I don't believe it is, in my mind. Again,
No, it's fair. It's
other
your,
people
it's your
may
opinion.
consider
Yeah.
that a slasher.
Yeah.
To me, in order for it to be what I consider this is a slasher film, it has to have one
Like a singular
lurking, a singular entity.
like a serial killer kind of.
Yeah, like Michael
vibe.
Myers,
Michael Myers,
like
Freddy
Jason.
Krueger,
And again, Scream would work because
Chucky.
it's not the people playing Ghostface. Ghostface
It's a
is
persona.
the one entity.
As long as it's a
Yes.
persona.
Leatherface
and that's
is sort
again
of
my
like,
opinion on
I guess
how I
he-
would do it.
Leatherface is like sort of the consistent like glue though. So but
I think
that's
he's the
like the thing
he's
is
the front
like,
man of the band.
like I
So
think
what
it's
about the
like-
movie The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2023? Is that a slasher?
That one definitely is a slasher.
That
That
was
one's
just
a
a-
slasher. That is a slasher and a half. But I think like something that it does bring to it is iconic killer.
Mhm.
You don't have that before Leatherface.
Oh yeah,
really.
absolutely.
Leatherface,
That
like a guy with like a title or a name, like a name that is like easily like Norman Bates might be before that, but Norman Bates is not really like, it's not like a slasher character.
yeah, I don't feel like he
Again,
would be
also
a
based
slasher.
sort of on Ed Gein and shit.
But he also has a Final Girl. That's a Final Girl too, the Psycho movies. So, but yeah, no,
No,
I
it
think
doesn't have a
I
Final
think
Girl.
that I think saying that
Norman Bates is the final girl.
I just think that, like, yes, Leatherface is absolutely iconic, but to me that's more like he's the front man of the band then. You know what I mean?
Okay,
Like
right.
like, because to me the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, what makes it so scary and so good isn't just Leatherface. It's
Right.
the fact that it's
They
an
tr-
entire family, and some of them are so normal that you wouldn't even think
Right.
they were part of
You
this
go to him for
murderous
help.
family. Like,
Yes.
exactly, that happens all the time. Like, I think is that like a constant in all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre one? Like, there's somebody they go to for help that it's like, oh, don't do it. I've seen the other ones. He's gonna be their normal one, but so to me it's not
The face
it's
of
not
the
a
family,
slasher
literally,
because
like, pun not intended.
I think that I feel like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre started has its own subgenre that it's the big daddy of, which is the family, the murderous family.
Yeah,
you got
like you
Hills
watch-
Have Eyes, you have Wrong Turn.
You got Devil's
it's-
Rejects.
yes.
is like the next step from Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a movie like
and it's a different
House of a Thousand
feel.
Corpses, and more specifically
Yeah.
Devil's Rejects.
To me, it's a different feel when you've got this entire family that you're going from, as opposed to one entity, one
I gotcha.
unstoppable. Even if
It's
the
more
main
like
face of it's one person.
it has more in common with, like, in your opinion, more in common with like a home invasion movie than it does like a straight up slasher,
Correct.
like
It-
Friday the 13th.
Yes, because to me it's
Okay.
it's almost, to me it almost gives more of a sense of dread, because in like Friday the 13th, they're never like concerned with who can I trust, because it's always this thing that's trying to kill me has a hockey mask or a burlap sack or whatever, but that's what's trying to kill me, not, oh my God, like I got away and then one of them brought me back. To me, it gives more dread, a bigger sense of dread, knowing that you don't have to worry about just one
You don't know. Yes.
killing
I gotcha.
entity. You have to worry about everything because you don't
Well,
know who's part of it.
Like, well, and to argue that point, in classic slashers, the characters in the movies don't know who the person in the mask killing them is.
True.
I mean, later on, you know it's Jason or whatever, but in that first Friday the 13th movie, you don't know who the person in the mask killing people is. In Sleepaway Camp, you don't know who the killer is, etc.
Well, actually, they're not wearing a mask in the first Friday the 13th film, so
Her mask is her
You,
humanity.
all right, man. But you don't.
We all wear
nobody
masks,
knows who's killing.
metaphorically
that is,
speaking.
That is
The
what
audience
my
is
point
unaware.
not what I said. My point is that they is.
But also to me, the
But
Friday
all
the
that's just messed up,
13th,
Yeah.
the first Friday the 13th, to me, isn't in the same genre as the rest of the Friday the 13th.
That's true.
it's not.
It's not because of it being
a
the
different-
mother.
It's not
the
a horror
revenge.
movie.
It's a horror movie, but I mean,
It's not the same
subgenre.
genre.
If you're gonna be picky, I'm just kidding. No, not the same
I'm
subgenre.
curious on this right now. Why didn't you bring us up during Friday the 13th when we did that? Did we do Friday the 13th?
Maybe I don't know.
Did we? We were gonna. I don't
Are
think
You
we did.
you asking me to?
watched it.
Yeah, I was
I
saying.
watched it a
Are you
couple
asking me to
times.
map out how my brain works? Because good luck.
No,
I have
I
no
want.
clue.
I'm curious right now what you mean by they're not. So you don't feel it's a
They're not the
slasher
same subgenre. I don't feel it.
subgenre?
Like to me, the other Friday the 13th, and that's why it's always that big thing, like in the first Scream, where it's like, who was the killer in Friday the 13th? Because you talk to people about Friday the 13th, they say Jason. But the whole fact that the first one wasn't even Jason, it was the mother. It's a different feel. And even though it's still a horror movie and it's still good, I'm not saying it's not good. I'm just saying it falls to me in a different subset than the rest of them.
Because you're
where
not
you have
seeing
that
the killer.
hulking entity.
It does borrow more from like European style like giallo kind of movies, the first Friday the 13th, than it does more like a traditional like 80 I feel like the first Friday the 13th feels more like a 70s horror movie.
Absolutely.
And then when you get into 2, 3, 4, etc., those are squarely 80s horror movies where they're more focused on the kills. They're more focused on the guy being more of a unstoppable presence than that, because that is more of an American kind of thing, like, you know, with Leatherface is like a big hulking guy with a mask, and Michael Myers is a big hulking guy with a mask. I mean, not saying that giallo movies don't have that. They obviously have masked characters that kill and stuff, but I feel like that's more of that kind of sensibility.
So
Plus, the original Friday the 13th was set up for you to at least feel a little bit
do you
bad
feel
for
the same way about the Halloween movies?
What do you mean?
Like where you don't feel that they fit in the same subgenre as the films go on?
It's still, you still have the hulking. Like, unless there's one out there, because I
Well,
haven't seen all the Halloween movies.
yeah,
But
he's-
is there one that
Michael
doesn't
Myers
have Michael
is
Myers?
tall in the but would you really say he's like a hulking figure in the first Halloween?
Hulking, I'm not talking about his size. He
imagine the guy-
hangs someone from the wall with a knife. Like
Yeah.
that's
Well,
strength. There's strength in
There's
that.
strength there.
He's more
But
like
that,
I
you could
think-
say the same thing with Jason's mother too.
Yeah,
I
can
think
you?
he's more. I think Golden is more thinking not like an imposing big guy. I think he's more thinking of just like an unstoppable killing
Yeah,
machine,
the dread,
where you think this guy's dead and then he just keeps coming back and you can't get rid of this guy or gal or whatever it is.
So what?
You know, Chucky's
How
the
would you
same
break
thing.
the subgenre up then? Like, what are the parameters?
for this for me, for it to
I just
be
want him to define
a
it.
slasher, it's a single entity with the feeling of it being unstoppable, unescapable.
And I think Ghostface fits into that because Ghostface, the costume is one person.
Yeah.
Whether
It's
there's
one
two
entity.
people doing it, it's one person doing like.
But there's one person
working
doing
as-
it in Friday the 13th movie.
I understand.
but she's not.
But
Okay. Also, she's sympathetic.
the
Maybe not hugely sympathetic,
Not
but
till the
she's,
very end of the movie.
you
doesn't matter.
see,
She's
but
still
you
doing it
see the
for a
kill-
reason that you
okay,
could be
I
like,
Can't you
oh.
say?
think I
Can't you
know-
say Scream is sympathetic? The killers.
I think you. I
You,
think
they
you
like
can
horror movies?
understand where they're coming from, though.
They like horror movies.
I think I.
No,
I
it's
think I
not the
see,
reason why
like,
they're killing people.
One difference in between like what Golden's saying and what he thinks like a slasher is I think you got to see the guy on screen killing people, and you don't. I know you do sort of see that in Friday the 13th. I understand, but this like when you watch Friday the 13th, the original
It's all
one,
POV kills.
it's all
Right.
POV kills. And like I said, it feels more like a 70s kind of thing. Slashers are basically an 80s.
But it like completely fits the slasher formula, except for
I understand.
his
I'm not
aspect about the.
honestly, I'm not arguing that the Friday the 13th, the original one, isn't like a slasher.
I just think he's
think it is.
sexist, and because it's a woman. No, I'm joking. That's
I was like,
that. I don't. I
How
shouldn't. do
dare
that.
you? How dare you? No, it's just for me it feels different because to me what makes it a slasher too, and I feel like maybe this says something about
Maybe I
me
don't
personally.
understand like what you classify as a slasher.
I
Maybe
think
that's
a
where.
slasher has.
I think
more
it's a
American-like
it's a
feeling
single
to it.
unsympathetic, unstoppable, unescapable entity. Like they
But
don't.
what's
Wishmaster.
what isn't
The Jinn
unescapable
from Wishmaster.
in Friday the 13th?
Yeah, you're right. Everybody always gets away from Jason, and then he's there again, and he kills him.
The first one.
Or the first one.
Pamela Voorhees.
But she's not to me. I don't know. To me it feels different because it's just a person with who's doing this is the revenge for her son, and I don't. To me, it just feels she's not. To me, she's not unsympathetic. She has. It's very sympathetic that she lost a child because people were grossly negligent, and she doesn't want it to happen again. And yeah, even though it brought her into psychosis, it's just when it comes down to it, she's still just a parent doing this thing, and nobody goes like if you were to say, hey, what are the if you were to go up to somebody and be like, I'm just gonna say a horror movie, tell me who you think of. And with that case, like Leatherface even fits into that, but because of the fact he's got a family behind him, it feels different to me than a regular slasher. But nobody, if you say Friday the 13th, and I'm not even saying if you say the Friday the 13th series, you just say Friday the 13th, no one is saying Pamela Voorhees. Nobody.
Yeah, but that's not a defining
To me, it is.
aspect for a
To me,
slasher.
it is.
For
To me, it is. If you're going to have a slasher, you need the iconic killer, the unsympathetic, the
but it can
unrelenting.
change in the sequels, which happens with Friday the 13th. She's still iconic for that movie.
For that movie, she
yes.
is. The series, but to me, the series, she isn't. Nobody's first thinking about her.
Okay.
Nobody
Because
will
this
first
is
think about
years
her.
later, but that doesn't discredit that as a slasher. I don't feel like.
To me, it does. To me, she doesn't feel like the slasher entity.
I think
to be,
I think a
for
more
me to consider a
I
slasher.
think a more important distinction is like how the movie looks and feels. Like
So aesthetics are.
aesthetics are important. I think. Like, well, I mean that's how you would define like a subgenre, anyways, in a movie.
I understand that the first Friday the 13th film has a completely different aesthetic than the later ones. I mean, arguably 2 is pretty similar.
It only came
So
like a year.
Golden
afterwards.
is dead on with that, 100%.
Mark that on your calendars, yeah.
I retract my statement.
Instantly regretted it.
You said Golden was right about something. What the
Damn,
hell?
I'm
Is
sorry.
that about?
I'm out. Just
Yeah,
drop
I-
it.
edit that out.
Disagree that Friday the 13th does not fit the slasher formula. Maybe you could niche it down into like a supernatural slasher film and say that she doesn't fit that subgenre, but I don't know where you classify Friday the 13th and what subgenre if you don't put it in slasher.
It's just a horror movie.
What about?
I don't know. I don't know.
Stop
Like,
it.
I don't know how
Stop
to
it
explain.
right now.
But I just don't get the same feeling off that movie as I do off of slashers. And maybe part of it isn't even the fact of who the
Okay, but
killer
what
is. Maybe
about-
part of it's that
My Bloody Valentine. Does that
Been so
fit
long
the
since I've seen that.
slasher?
Oh yeah, 100%.
That feel for you and stuff?
I haven't seen that in so long. So
Because I feel like Friday the 13th has that same feel as those early, like, well, I guess we'll start with Halloween, 78 to 81, 82 slasher. Like, you watch a lot of those movies and they all have like a very similar feel and aesthetic that changed later with the sequels for like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th.
Here's one distinction,
Halloween.
though, in Mighty Bloody Valentine than it does from the original Friday the 13th.
He's
There is a
running away in the
guy.
cave.
There's a guy with a costume that is completely like.
Yeah,
his
he has a
face-
costume.
He's got a mask, and you see him killing people and shit. Like
And maybe
you
that
do
is part
see-
of it.
I guess you do see like the arrow go through like Kevin Bacon and stuff, but you don't see the person doing it and shit. It's more like
Okay, yeah, you don't see their face.
And
no.
maybe part of it is that the original Friday the 13th, most of it's an idea of who is this? Who's the one killing?
That's
But
also
Scream
My
has that.
Bloody- My
No,
Bloody
because
Val-
it's
Val-
still
My
Ghostface.
Bloody Valentine.
I
And
know
But
what
it's
you
still
did last
Ghostface.
summer.
Like, yeah, you want to know who's behind the costume, but you still know the entity. You still know Ghostface is the killer. You still
she
know.
doesn't have a mask, but she has her classic sweater. And that's brought up throughout the series.
It
She,
sure
I mean,
is.
she's iconic.
Yeah, and they
She is
brought it back
iconic,
for
but
Freddy
does,
versus
to me,
Jason.
she's just not a slasher.
In the second
doesn't
movie
give me
with
that
the
same
sweater
feel.
and the head,
right.
the riding head.
It's like, honestly, I don't consider Sleepaway Camp a slasher. I don't know what I would consider it, but other than it's very iconic to me. But I don't know if I don't know if I'd go in with a slasher.
Again, that one sort of does fit into the Friday the 13th mold where
Well, it's a summer camp.
summer camp, you don't see the killer. The
Sleepaway
killer's
Camp.
identity is a mystery until the very end.
And then
Angela is an
there's the dawn.
unstoppable force.
Yeah.
You haven't seen 2 and
A
3?
lot of that's a surprise. Oh yeah, but in the first one, it's more of that
Alright.
surprise kills because you wouldn't expect it, and then a surprise dong.
Well, the surprise kills the guy that dies by jumping into the pot of boiling soup or whatever the fuck
I
that
just
is.
dumped on him, yeah.
How any
cook.
of that happens. The pot that surely could not exist in real
Don't call me
life.
Shirley.
It's like the largest pot. It's bigger than the guy.
He was going to boil potatoes, man.
You have to cook for all like
the-
20 kids
The
that are there.
pedophile guy that you don't feel bad for at all that gets killed. None of them you're supposed to feel
So,
bad
I don't
for.
think I've even watched that movie on DVD. I think it's been since VHS. I've watched
Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah.
Oh, it's been
I
a
watched
long time.
it like maybe 2 years ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
I love Sleepaway
I like
Camp.
It's a fun movie for what it
What was
is.
the movie Oh, was it? I was like, what was the movie I was just watching that had her in it? And is it Terrifier 2?
She's in
Felicia
that.
Rose? Yeah,
Yes,
those-
she's in
oh,
that.
okay.
She's
I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh, I love her. She's awesome.
Yeah, she is awesome.
We did before one of our movies came out. I paid for a cameo from her to tell people to come to our movie, and it was awesome. I was just so like I was so excited, but also I kind of felt bad because like
Well,
when
now
you
I'm
look
gonna
at
tell
cameo
her.
and you look at the prices of some of them, and then you get like hers, and it was like $30,
Fine.
and I'm like, oh,
She,
'Cause she's so
however,
iconic.
I'm
but-
messaging her on
yeah,
Twitter
but-
right now. Remember Golden? He paid for that thing for his video. He doesn't think you're
I
an
mean,
iconic slasher.
Also, keep in mind that
Felicia
she
Rose.
probably has like at least like 10 people a day.
Oh, I'm sure.
Daily, she's probably doing those. So I guarantee she's making, a nice significant amount of money.
Oh, I'm sure, but it's just like it's the same way as when we were at Frightmare in the Falls, and you see like these massive lines for some of these people, and then like Christy Swanson was there, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go get her autograph. There's no line,
Wow.
and I feel bad because I love Christy Swanson. I love the original Buffy, and of course, Debbie Friend.
She's been canceled a little bit, so
Oh, is it? Yeah, she got
yeah, I think that's
right.
could be a
But,
reason
okay,
why she may
but
not have
what
a bunch
about
of people
the other
that watch
person
it.
who had almost no line? Keith David.
That's
That
crazy.
was sad.
That's
That's
insane.
insane.
That was
Wow.
so sad to me.
That's
The only time there was
if I
a line-
going to that, I would. That's the guy I would.
That's probably like number one
The
dude. I would
only
go to.
time there was a
Yeah, yeah,
line
yeah.
for him was because he was on a break and everybody was lining up for when he came back. and I mean, I was in that line, so I was happy that I didn't have to wait too long. But at the same time, I'm like, and especially because you go up to his body of work because they have like their headshots out to go, oh, who do you want to thing? And I'm like,
gargoyles.
So of course, since I'm dressed like McCready,
Spawn.
I was like, well, I want the one with him and McCready. Like,
Yeah,
I went for that one, but I mean, they had like gargoyles, they had like all these things, and Keith
Spawn.
David.
I mean, the man
He has been in so many things that are a huge part of my life, like, and including the new He-Man series, the one that just dropped on Netflix, the third season. He's Hordak.
Yeah,
and his voice is just like the second you hear his voice, it's like, oh, that's Keith David.
Him and Tony Todd have like the best voices for like,
and they're both in it.
Yeah.
Tony Todd is Scareglow.
Yeah.
Who, like, I don't, maybe it's because, like, I don't remember much of, like, He-Man when I was growing up, other than the basic stuff, and I love He-Man, but I don't remember Scareglow being that big of a character.
You just threw out a bunch of names. I have no idea who you're talking about.
I'll murder you. You don't know who Tony Todd is?
No, for He-Man.
How dare you?
He-Man characters.
Scareglow is and I want to say, I don't even know if he was in the old cartoons. He was a glow-in-the-dark skeleton toy. But he might as well, he could have been like a different iteration of Skeletor, but instead they went, no, we're going to make him this
guy. Like the He-Man body with like a skeleton painted on him with a cape.
He's He-Man.
He looks like a Mexican wrestler.
He's He-Man's version of Hades. He runs the underworld. He runs hell in Eternia. Or it's called Subternia, because they're very good with coming up with really interesting.
And Keith David does the voice for that?
No, he does Hordak. Hordak was one of the big bad guys. He was Skeletor's boss.
Oh, he had like the big cape thing behind his head, or whatever.
He was mostly he was She-Ra.
Yeah, he was She-Ra when they merged them. When they're like, we need more girls to buy these toys. Let's make a girl version of He-Man and call her She-Ra.
And the sickest part of all this is I never even really watched He-Man or
I did
She-Ra. It was a little before my time, but I somehow have this knowledge of this shit, of this crap that I don't collect the He-Man toys, but I know all this shit. It's just,
I mean, the backstory. I love the backstory and the reasoning behind He-Man. Like the whole backstory. Like I've seen, like the Toys That Made Us. I've seen a couple other documentaries about it. Then there was one documentary specifically about how He-Man came about. And the entire documentary is based solely on that, and I love those. Like when I'm watching it, and especially because you look back and you go, "Man, I got duped as a kid." Like 100%, they say, "Yeah, we made these toys because we missed the boat on the Star Wars franchise, and
we wanted to do Conan."
So it was like Conan, and then we watched Conan. We're like, "Oh, we cannot sell that to kids."
It was a couple of years. It
went to a dude.
If Conan came out like maybe a couple of years later, they would definitely have been able to make a toy line of it. I mean, they did that with everything. Like Rambo had a toy line, RoboCop,
Aliens.
One of the most violent ass not for kids movies that is definitely for kids. Right. RoboCop. Aliens. Yeah, I mean, Aliens and Predator, like that was my first introduction to the Xenomorphs and stuff, where the 1992 Kenner toy line of the Aliens. I was like,
that was so disappointing, because when I watched, I'd seen Alien a bunch, I had the VHS. When I finally got to see Aliens, I was expecting to see like the bull alien and all that stuff.
Alien, yeah, the mantis alien.
There's no such
no. Those were
Aliens
was
cool my toys. First foray into the series.
Oh, really?
And I was like, and what it threw me off. Like, there's so many movies out there that are like a sequel or part of a trilogy or whatever, that I started with the wrong one because
Terminator 2.
Because they
about the
they
Texas
named
Chainsaw
it the
Massacre?
wrong thing. Or not, they didn't. I don't want to say they named it the wrong thing, but if they didn't put the 2 in it, I didn't know it was a second one. So while Aliens, the name is clever to go, yeah, the first one was called Alien. This one's Aliens. So it's a sequel, but I didn't. Same reason I watched Army of Darkness before I watched any of the Evil Dead.
Yeah, I saw Army.
And I went in there going, what a weird way to start a movie. Like, this is how you guys are starting? I mean, kudos. I like this already, but man, that's a weird. And then someone's like, that's a third, right? And I'm like, what?
Do you know
Mind is blown.
Do you know how James Cameron pitched Aliens?
He went into a room in front of a bunch of producers.
Yes. Yes, he did. He went in front of
course, that's how you
20th
pitch.
Century Fox. Your alien was on the whiteboard. He drew an S at the end and put and made it a dollar sign.
Brilliant.
Literally, like that. He
Brilliant.
like pitched aliens. Like, what if instead of one xenomorph, we have a bunch of them? Okay,
But there,
good, brilliant. You're like James Cameron, you fucking done it again. You
but
son
there's
of
some
a bitch.
themes in like Aliens that if you don't know it's a sequel and you didn't watch the first one, you're like, I don't understand why she
Right.
hates robots so much.
Oh,
Like, you know, what I mean? Like you're just like, I'm like, I don't get what the big hatred for robots. Robots are awesome.
Why doesn't she trust the company? The
Yeah.
company seemed. Paul Reiser is a good guy. Why doesn't she trust him?
yeah,
So yeah, there's definitely themes.
poor Bishop.
Yeah.
There's definitely themes in that, and
He was
same thing with
biting
Army
me.
of
He was
Darkness.
biting me early.
Like you watch Army of Darkness, and it's like, oh, I don't understand. Like, I was like, it seems really weird to go through
This
this
guy's
whole
got a
story in the
chainsaw
first 5
hand.
minutes, but I'm in. Let's do this. Let's see where this goes. And
Yeah.
literally went a week of thinking that was just because they didn't advertise it as a sequel. They didn't. So I went to the theater to watch it on a first date, and I was like, this is. And it's like a week later, the dude I was working with was like, he goes, I was like talking about Army of Darkness, and he just goes, join us. And I'm like, okay. And he just kept doing it. I'm like, what is your problem, dude? And he's like, have you not seen Evil Dead? And I'm like, well, I'm talking about Army of Darkness. He's like, but yeah, that's the third one of the Evil Dead series. There's Evil Dead 1, Evil Dead 2, and then Army of Darkness. And I'm like, oh, I'll have to go check those out. So then I watched Evil Dead, and I'm
Oh,
like,
you
oh,
ran-
okay,
this
I like it.
movie's
Then I watched
terrible.
Evil Dead 2, and I'm like, this is it. This is my favorite movie, and it still is my favorite movie because to me, I will always be a lover of horror comedy, and to me, Evil Dead 2, like, because horror comedy.
So then why don't you like Tucker and Dale?
I love Tucker and Dale. You take those words back, or I will punch you right in your mouth. I love Tucker and Dale because horror comedy. I feel like you have to have that right mix, though. You have to do it right. You can't. It can't be too slapstick. I shouldn't say it can't be slapstick because obviously Evil Dead 2.
I was gonna say
Has
that's
slapstick
all
moments.
like Three Stooges shit.
But I feel like the goofier you get, you have to also go that far in the horror, the suspense, the dread.
to bring it, yeah, and
Like, it has to be equal.
to bring it back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I think the second one does that very well. Like Toby Hooper,
I haven't seen that in so long. I can't wait. For
Toby
us to watch it.
Hooper, I think it really
I think
balances the
he's
funny
when
stuff.
he says horror comedy though, I think he's talking more slapstick.
No, not always. I mean, I do like
Gremlins
the
too.
slaps. I do like the ones that have slapstick, as long as they also go that far in horror. So I don't want it. I don't like spoof and farce. There's some that do it okay, like the scary movies when they were coming out. But then it got to the point where it was ridiculous and it wasn't good. But I mean, I do like ones like because to me, Cabin in the Woods isn't slapstick, but it's a horror comedy to me, and
Sure.
I love it because it
Just
all
so
comes
over the
down to the
top.
right mix. And if you don't have the right mix,
The character.
it's horrible to watch.
I
And
think
it-
the writing,
funny people
the writing of
themselves.
it, yeah, you have to have the writing of it has to be funny.
So there's like that realistic comedy where people in situations would act a certain way that's believable. Like Cabin in the Woods, arguably.
Yeah.
I say arguably because I'm sure like you could
Well,
make a
they're-
case.
Yeah, and
But
they're
even with
also- they're
Thanksgiving,
also
you
being
know.
drugged and stuff, so they are doing more horror movie type stuff,
cliches.
and that's like pointed out by
Which
the
I
guy
like,
that-
though,
I still
too.
can't believe Eli Roth drugged them during this.
But I like the fact that they do that too, like where they try to like bring more realism to why these people do things that anybody that's watched a horror movie is like, why would you do that? They're like, oh, maybe this is why they've done it this whole time. You know what I mean? Like, and like that.
Was Texas Chainsaw Massacre the first one you've seen in the series? I wanted to ask you that since you brought that up earlier.
I honestly, I want to say 3 was because
Okay.
in my
Whoa,
brain, in my
really?
mind,
Well, that had an awesome trailer.
was
We
the-
talk about that all the time.
Oh God, I can't wait.
The
When we talk
Excalibur
about that
trailer.
movie, we're gonna have to play the
Plus,
clip. Of
We
that.
will. We will.
I was in that time, back in that
That's
time and
true.
stuff. It was also a thing where a lot of these series of horror movies, you didn't need to watch them in order.
No.
So
right.
I at no time did I think it was weird to start with 3, and I want to say 3 was either on TV. I think that's what it was. It was on HBO.
It was
so-
that was a Cinemax HBO.
It's not like I went out to look for it. I'm like, oh, let's watch this thing called Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, and I remember Tow Truck Driver. Like that's in my brain. Just like what's funny is the first movie, the scene that's most in my head all the time. Second scene is the twirling chainsaw. It's not even the first. Leatherface isn't even in the first thing for me. The first thing to me is the grandpa and that hammer. That scene stuck in my head after watching that. Like, that's the scene that always comes to the foreground, not even Leatherface, even though Leatherface is the most iconic part of it. But like, to me, it's that. And so, yeah, but I think I started with 3. And is there a Texas, like, sometimes I just meld movies, you know, the cop, or not the cop, the drill sergeant from,
That's the remake.
but he's in one of them, right?
Yeah, he's
As
in
the cop.
Yeah, he's in the remake, and he's in.
So that's not in my brain. Good.
In the beginning,
No, that's
he's
not
in
just my
the
brain.
prequel. He's in
Texas
2
Chainsaw
of
Massacre
them.
at the beginning,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's in 2 of them.
But he doesn't he like smell the gun?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
After.
Oh,
Golden.
after it was in. Oh, I'm just saying, like, that was a scene. Another
No,
scene
I
that
know.
was.
I'm doing that because I'm thinking about that.
Plus,
scene
I
and
love
how
that.
I'm gonna have to watch it again.
I love him as an actor, though, too.
Yeah, he's
Like,
a good actor.
saving
He's really
Even
good.
though he's one character, he's like Christopher Walken to me. Christopher Walken plays Christopher Walken in every movie.
Well, you know, you
And
say
he
that,
plays
but
him.
he in 7 he is not that guy.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that is a good point.
He's sort of that guy in Willard.
He does have a lot of range thinking about it.
But I'll always, like, the first roles of his I'll always remember are that character, because even in Frighteners, he played that exact character as a ghost.
He's a good yelling.
Because that's what he was in
voice.
real
He's
life.
Scary looking.
I haven't seen that since we did that for the podcast back in like
Anybody that would,
Really
10 years ago, 11 years ago. Yeah.
it's just, I mean, it's obviously who he is, and like, I don't think anybody's ever surprised to find out that he was a drill sergeant.
No.
Like, it's not like one of the, like, when you find out Dolph Lundgren's a physicist, you're like, what? But you find out that you're like, he was really a drill sergeant. Oh yeah, no shit.
He was a physicist,
Whoa.
but he made exercise videos before he became an actor.
Have you ever seen the interview with Stallone, where they're like, he's like, why did I hire Dolph Lundgren? He goes, I hated the guy. He goes, I hate him. He comes in here, he's like 1,000 jumps in the evolutionary scale, and he's like just going up all these things. He goes, and he's like talking about his like hair, where you need a lawnmower to cut, lips that if he goes over 10,000 feet they're gonna explode, chest, shoulders. He's saying all this stuff. Then he goes. And then he's smart.
How I describe Reacher.
And he's like, and he's smart. He's a physicist. He's this and all this stuff. And then
He's got an ass you can bounce a quarter off of.
But it's like, fair. Because I love Dolph Lundgren, but like but I also thought, for the longest time, I always thought
He
that,
speaks multiple
that
languages.
Dolph Lundgren's size was movie magic. Like, I honestly never realized that he was really that big until I think it was, I don't think it was till I saw Expendables. And I'm like, holy shit, he's actually that size. Like, when he's just like throwing Jet Li around. Like,
Well,
like, I mean, I realize that Jet Li's
Jet
small.
Li's tiny, so is
It's like throwing around Kevin Hart.
Yeah, it's. I don't think quite that bad.
So
Kevin Hart's tiny. Or then again, I only see Kevin Hart next to
I think
people.
Jet Li's a little more formidable than. Kevin
Well, I just mean
Hart.
size wise. I don't mean physical attributes. Yeah, Jet Li could obviously beat Kevin Hart in a fight. Or Kenny. Kevin Hart's got a big heart. Little body.
So one interesting aspect of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
Oh, we're back to that. Okay. That's what we're talking
Oh,
about.
before I get to that, I will come back around to this.
Eventually.
Was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre the first one in the series you had seen?
I think so.
Like I said, I can't remember.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember. Like I'm pretty sure I rented that first. But because after I saw that, I was like, oh, there's more, and then I watched, all the ones that were current up to that point, which were, 2, 3. 3 was a little tough to find. I think I saw that one last. Because I want to say that one.
Well, out of the first 4.
Yeah, because I don't think I was able to rent that one because I don't think the video store that I went to had that, and I think I did end up seeing it on like Cinemax or HBO. Yeah. I taped it off there and watched it.
So, yeah, because we had the movie places here, and I had talked about it extensively on past episodes where my dad's cousin owned that video store, so I'd have just great deals around those, but they didn't have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. So, like, it was like Friday the 13th 2 for me. If we went to Blockbuster, it had to be able to be for a purchase and through my allowance to be able to, through through my allowance to be able to purchase it or whatever. I say allowance, but like whatever birthday money or I had
Gotcha.
from or working for my grandpa, But anyways, this was one that I was able to purchase. Friday the Third or Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was a movie that eluded me forever, but luckily I was able to see this. So I think I liked Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 a lot better than I should have back then. Because when you're young, and I don't know if it's still the same thing nowadays because everyone's so critical, but when we were young, because we're really close in age, you just like stuff.
Oh,
it had
no.
Leatherface in it. You're gonna like it.
I'll say it that still sort of holds true today because like maybe it's not. I know the movie isn't made for me. However, like the Five Nights at Freddy's thing, I thought that
I enjoyed it.
you liked it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You didn't like it?
No, because they took.
I thought it was gonna be awful and unwatchable, and it's actually a very watchable film.
And my kids loved it.
Yeah.
My kids really liked it. My son's not really big into horror. My daughter is. Last night she was watching the Scream movies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So Andre wanted to watch that. He's 13 and he loves gaming, and so Five Nights at Freddy's is a big thing for like horror streamers and stuff, for his age group. And we watched it, and then I showed him Willy's Roadhouse.
Oh, you mean Willy's Wonderland?
Or Willy's Wonderland?
Willy's Wonderland, a movie that did it a little better. I think
it
made the animatronics like they were killing people. Like I guess they killed people in the beginning, but then they were they kind of became friends with them. Spoiler for Five Nights at Freddy's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but he ended up liking Willy's Wonderland so much we watched it like 3 times.
Yeah,
we only watched Friday Night at Freddy's.
Nick Cage is great in that. He's like he's silent, but it's not the kind of movie that needs like a character. Like that's the kind of movie where Nick Cage, you can get away with Nick Cage just being quiet the whole movie.
Well, I mean, he put so much into it, like with just his actions and stuff. Plus, I always love in that movie.
He has a bad reputation of like just because he does bad movies doesn't mean that he brings it 100% every time.
Yeah,
like
he never just phones.
No. He's underrated in that sense where I think people just kind of write him off as like a bad movie guy or a bad actor, and he's not. He's not a bad actor, and he does do shitty movies. I'm not gonna defend.
But a lot of them aren't that bad.
No, they're good because they're not good, but they're better because Nick Cage is in them. Yes, they have Nick Cage in them, and they're
like
enjoyable.
Mom and Dad isn't that terrible of a movie.
Well, no, that one has style and everything. It's directed by one of the guys that did like Crank and stuff.
Yeah.
The Neveldine, or I can't remember which one. Taylor or Neveldine did it. And the music in that one is done by a electronic music artist I like named Mr. Bell. He did the score for that. That movie has just that soundtrack is insanely good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and what? So, okay, so now that we got all this back, what were you going to say about Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Because you asked me...
The faces that Leatherface wears.
Oh, yeah.
And how it's, like, when he wears the pretty lady face, he's, like, putting on his best face for dinner.
Yeah. And when Cook brings Sally back, he's got like an old lady one. Yeah. He's got the spooning. He's kind of a little more hunched over than he usually
taking
is.
on like the personality of the face he wears.
But my favorite one is the when he shows up when the guy's wandering in the house and he's like, "Whoops," and Leatherface just shows up and whacks that guy. That is the Leatherface look I love that look of that look and his suit in part 2.
Yeah.
The suit in part 2 I really like. Those are like
I can't wait to rewatch 2 now. Like
it's so
awesome, it's been
dude.
so like I've seen it, but it's been so long.
And what stinks is we didn't even get Toby Hooper's version that he wanted.
No.
But I forgot what I was gonna say now.
His masks.
Yeah.
Like, were you guys talking about like introducing younger people into horror movie when I was gone? I was just
no, but actually, so here's something interesting. I had my nieces over a few weeks ago, and they wanted to watch. We watched it. It's like a staple for that younger audience. That's gonna be like their Halloween. I feel like in 20 years.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
No, It.
Oh, It.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 100%, dude. My daughter's obsessed.
So we watched that, and then I showed them Happy Death Day, and they loved it. And then they wanted to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2023. I'd already seen it, and it honestly, like, I know people hate it because for arguably good reasons, for it being a sequel and not living up to certain expectations, but it's not a bad movie.
No. I think more people would like it if it wasn't called Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, and it wasn't Leatherface for sure.
For 100%.
And that's another movie that has a very interesting way of dealing with the passing of time.
They have a
referencing back to Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, and they have a legacy character that stinks.
So, we watched that, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll show them the 1974 version." Well, my one niece fell asleep. The other
Nightmares.
the other niece, that is just too boring for him. Is what Golden called a slow burn because he has the mentality of a 13-year-old.
That's
yeah. That movie. It's not slow paced, but it looks and like. I don't know, like I understand like the mentality because when I was that age and I saw something that looked old, I was like, fuck this. I did not like 70s.
See, I don't remember ever being like that.
I didn't like 70s movies. I liked 80s movies because I liked the practical effects and everything, but I felt like stuff from like the 70s and when even before that were too old looking for me. I've grown out of that and I like everything now.
But to that too, like so I saw again seeing movies out of order. I saw Mallrats.
So when Talkies came out, Golden.
I hate I saw Mallrats and I love Mallrats. And then someone's like, "Oh, you should watch his first movie, Clerks." The second we hit play, and I was like, "Oh, it's black and white."
Oh, really?
But don't get me wrong, but it didn't stop me from watching it. I watched it and I realized how much I loved it. But there was still that mindset for certain things that if they look older,
dude,
they feel older, it sometimes would take me out of it. But that being said, I mean, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And while it is a slower paced movie to get started, I still love it. And it's still good. It's still engaging. I mean, but I could probably tell you that if that was the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre I saw when I was that age, I probably wouldn't have liked the series at all.
Oh, really?
Because at that age, you had to you had to just get me right away.
Mm-hmm.
Have it be, you needed a cold open. Like I love a cold open. That's just like when something, even if it's like, oh, and then it's like, oh, 2 days earlier or whatever, But
when I watch older ones with my daughter, I just sort of have to hype up the movie a little bit.
You're like, you just wait, just wait.
I'm like, all right, I know you're gonna. I'm like, trust me, this movie is really good and scary. You're just gonna. It starts slow. It feels like it's not gonna. I was just like, trust Dad.
It'll get there. I just think too it's funny because like the difference in parenting styles. Like my parents literally didn't care what I was watching. They were just like, well,
that's how my dad was.
They're like, yeah, but just leave us alone and go watch something. And then it's like we get like with my daughter who's 9, and I'm just constantly thinking about like how if it's a certain time of night, Scooby-Doo will cause nightmares.
Oh, really?
She loves creepy stuff, and it's so hard because she's like, Daddy loves creepy stuff, and I love creepy stuff, but I only like creepy stuff before noon. Because when it gets like to 5 o'clock, that's it. Like you'll sit there and we'll be watching stuff, and of course I'll think this isn't scary. It's Scooby-Doo. It's animated for kids. But then I'll like look over to her, and she's like, and I'm like, oh, should we? Let's go to something else. But like I think parenting styles have changed so much because we were I feel like we were the generation of TV is a good babysitter. It doesn't matter what's on.
Right.
It can't be too bad. It's on television.
Kids are all different too. Like,
yeah, your parents would set you down in front of the Andy Griffith Show.
Leave it to Beaver.
Leave it to Beaver. I used to watch Nick at Night.
I Love Lucy.
Oh.
Who's Nick?
He's my friend. Told me not to talk about what we did.
He knew the Flintstones before the series.
Before they made a show about him.
I was like, that's a documentary. My childhood. But it's funny, like, too, because I'll see people like in like these horror movie groups, and they're like, oh, my 7-year-old wants to start watching horror movies. What should I start them with? And it's like, what?
I think
And people are like Terrifier. Like, sit
Yeah.
down. Shut up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there are acceptable
Gremlins-
Monster Squad. Bring in Monster Squad.
Gremlins is the one that I always cite as like a good like, you know,
But it doesn't
in
matter.
between like being scared, like genuinely scary and gruesome.
And they have a cuddly
And
creature,
then
though.
yeah, there's Gizmo, but then like when they're turned into the Gremlins, they're scary at first, and then they get to the bar scene, and then there's literal like cartoon sound effects playing and
Right.
stuff, and then it does lighten the tone a bit, and
Slasher.
I think that yeah, and then the movie does balance the comedy and horror. The sequel does not balance the comedy and horror. They goes
Straight
right
comedy.
into comedy, which is fine. I love that movie.
Oh, I
Some people
love
don't
New
like that
Batch.
movie. I
So-
love that movie. It's so Joe Dante is a brilliant director.
And they really went hard into like, why don't, like, we gave all, because like in the first one they gave a lot of the Gremlins their own personality, but like in the second one they gave the Mogwais their own personalities better,
yeah.
because they're like, oh, look at this one's this one's on sugar.
Yeah, these
Sugar. With sugar.
they all look like old like 1940s and 30s like actors. Of course, Joe Dante. That's his kind of sensibilities.
So going back to Golden's comment about someone recommending Terrifier for their 7-year-old, what that parent probably doesn't know, if that kid's into horror movies, they're on YouTube watching those kills
That's true.
on Dead Meat. But nothing wrong with the Dead Meat channel. It's
My
great.
kid watches
It's
it too.
great. Or all the clones that people trying to copy what Dead Meat does, and they're already experiencing the most gruesome parts of that movie on YouTube.
I mean,
Yeah,
as a
yeah.
kid, the big thing was Faces of Death
Oh
for
yeah.
us.
Right.
Like, you had that friend that was able to rent Faces of Death.
You watch
You
that
go over to
movie
his place
now.
to
You know how
watch it.
many times we tried to rent that as kids? I gotta call your parents.
Like, no, please don't.
But then, if you watch that movie with modern eyes, you like see the seams in it so badly. Like the monkey sad scene is like the fakest shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and, like you look at it now, you're like, I can't believe I thought that any of this stuff was real.
It's-
The stuff that's obviously fake. Like obviously
Those
they
movies
do have,
never
like,
interested me, but I know like everyone was so interested.
it didn't. It interests me in the sense that I felt like I shouldn't be watching it, so that made me want to watch it. But then you watch it and you're like, this is less of a movie and just
It's like, I want a story.
Right.
yeah. I need something more than just
That's
You
something
know,
that I'll always get behind. Which was-
YouTube before YouTube.
was my
You know,
argument
or live
right.
leak before live leak.
and,
It's
like, that's my argument that I'll always get you into,
Fake
which is always my
live
argument
leak.
too for like Terrifier. Why I don't like Terrifier is that I like gore. I like crazy kills and stuff, but you have to earn it. And I'm watching Terrifier 2 now. I'm giving it a chance. Just took a
you
pause
gotta
on it,
watch. You gotta watch it in. I'm sure you gotta watch it in parts. It's so
Yeah,
long for
but,
one.
like
And
that one.
it's
I feel like they're
punishing.
doing a little bit
little
better of a job.
There's a character. There's
I
a
will agree
character
with
in that
that.
movie that you can actually relate to and stuff. There's a main character in
Right.
that movie.
And I
There
think
really
they
isn't
did
one in
more for the mythos and like I felt like so far Terrifier 2 is so much
You'll-
better than the first Terrifier, and I don't even mean like effects and budget, just story.
I think you'll get more of an appreciation for the mythos and stuff and what you're saying in like the main character and everything closer to the end of the movie because there's more stuff at the end with
Yeah, I
her
think
and stuff.
I made it to I can't remember now where it was. I was like I think it was where she's at that party.
Okay.
So
So you're like halfway through
Yeah.
it. Okay.
it's a very long movie and I've been watching
it's
it.
long. And that's my biggest complaint about it is it's way too long. They could have shortened that a bit.
But I think my other big thing with why I don't like the Terrifier movies is more because of in the horror groups and stuff I'm in, there's so many people that are like, he's the best. Art the Clown's the best killer ever. And it's like, stop.
And I
But good for them though, man.
And putting him
I
into
like
the
it.
same
And-
ranks
yeah.
with the others though. It's like
and you know what? up until I saw Terrifier 2, I was sort of in the same boat because I did not like the first movie. I thought, and I was like, Art the Clown is corny, and I don't get it. And then I watched the second one, and I was like, you know
we
what?
liked All Hallows Eve because of that segment, though.
Yeah, I mean, that is, but like Terrifier is like, this is too much. This is too much of what it is. I don't care about art. I don't think he's scary or cute. But then the second one, I was like, you know what? I get it now.
The first one's definitely mid compared to the second one.
Yeah, I was like, I get it now. I get the appeal of art, and I get the appeal of the Terrifier movies. I'm not gonna probably watch the first one again, but the second one, whenever we review it, because I'm sure we will. Golden's watching it, so I'm sure we'll talk a little more extensively about it then. But I like that movie. I thought it was a fun slasher.
Yeah.
With good creative kills, good.
And in the second one, they're more earned.
Oh yeah,
because that's always going to be my issue.
Way
Is
more insane.
you have to earn it if you're going to try to give me this crazy shock value stuff. You can't just go, oh look at the shocking thing. You have to be like, you have to bring me along for the ride.
Well, we talked about this way back on the Sadness episode, remember?
Yes.
About how different regions in Asia, specifically like Korean horror and a lot of J horror, like earn it by character development. It's more about the emotions of the character rather than just shock value for shock value's sake. Hey, sweet.
Exactly. There's gotta be.
Yeah, there's an actual story in Terrifier 2. There's actual main character that has a story.
There's an actual mythos that they're building too.
Yes. Yeah.
That was a big addition and like plus in the second one.
Yeah, they definitely do like a more of a final girl thing with her near the end of the movie.
I feel like too often now you get filmmakers that make these like bigger budget horror movies, and because like with a lot of like micro budget and stuff, there's just so many restrictions. But when you have a movie where you can really envision your script, to me it seems like a lot of filmmakers either aren't horror fans and they're coming in to just get a movie that'll be profitable so they can start making the movies they want to make, which those movies
Wes Craven approach
are never great.
Except Wes Craven's a good director.
Well,
and
he
had
stuck in the
original
horror genre.
Yeah,
though.
he more resented that he became known as a horror guy as opposed to
because he wanted to make other movies besides just horror films or suspense. Because he did enjoy making movies. Like, I mean, he came up with the idea for A Nightmare on Elm Street,
and
not because he had to.
No, and he just
really wanted to make that movie. You know,
Last House on the Left and our Hills Have Eyes. And especially Hills Have Eyes too.
So, there's actually a whole story behind Hills Have Eyes too. We'll definitely get to it someday. It's about why he made that film, but
hopefully we don't have to watch it.
So, I just think like they go in, these directors that make these films, and it's not everyone, but you could tell like a lot. It just seemed like there's a majority of people that are like, oh, this is scary. This is what horror fans want, instead of just focusing on the story of their script and what's the best way to get that across and what actually feels natural to the script, true to the narrative. They're just forcing this stuff, and you can just tell now because we're at such a level of quality now in storytelling. It's not like the 80s where if you had a decent story, it blew your mind.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a decent story but amazing kills, nobody gives a shit. They don't want to watch that, Right. They'd rather have, at least for me, great story with mediocre looking kills,
Yes, I mean story is like more. Well, for me, I mean story is important. However, like a movie can be elevated if there is more of like
if you substitute story with narrative, you get a more pinpointed idea of the abstract creative process that goes into a movie. So when you talk about narrative, you're not just talking about like the story, even though I know I use the word story. When you talk about narrative, you're not just talking about story itself, it's what drives a narrative. Like, you don't need a great plot to have a good narrative. But there's aspects that go in it, like what we talked about, the aesthetics. So you go into a slasher film with expectations. If you're not going to meet those expectations, it better still stay true to the narrative because it's going to show if it's not. It's going to show that you're just trying to do something fancy for the sake of it being fancy and you're going against your narrative. And that's not the only thing that goes into it. Every part of a movie aspect goes into the narrative of the film. It should.
Mhm.
You know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What I was getting at is for me, like a movie, an okay movie can be elevated to a good movie with even if the narrative is whatever, the story's whatever, if there is, something, entertaining to watch.
So what I mean by narrative is everything you see and hear on the screen.
Okay. Okay, I got
So
you.
when you talk about like film narrative, that's what they're talking about.
Gotcha.
Everything that you are voyeuristically experiencing as a viewer.
So like the story can be bad, but as long as the aesthetics are and what I'm watching is not making me want to turn it off.
Right, because
that can be
because you can trump different aspects of the filmmaking process. Like aesthetics can trump story.
and honestly
plot.
lately that has been like how I watch movies lately. Like I've been a little more forgiving on story. Like
Right.
and I don't even want to bring it up because it's just going to be create a fight.
Is it a hot take?
It's a hot take. It's probably one of the hottest takes I have.
Okay.
I am one of the few people that actually like Rise of Skywalker.
Okay.
I like the way that movie looks. I know the story is stupid. It makes no sense. I'm aware. And I don't even argue against people. I won't even argue with people that say that movie is bad. Like you absolutely, I understand why you don't like that movie. I, however, think that movie has some of the coolest action set pieces in Star Wars movie. Like there's like a floating black pyramid that's upside down. There's all the lightsaber fights are fucking cool in that movie. How they get from point A to point B is stupid. Like I'm not saying
right.
Like I was watching the movie, I'm like, this is nonsense, and I'm like, I can tell this is gonna get people mad.
I can tell you exactly why that's fine because it's great. It's your opinion and it's genuine. And I'm used to you being wrong about so much stuff. I'm just kidding.
I knew that was kind because I also really like Last Jedi, and that's something that Anthony also is.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about Star Wars today.
No.
We're here to talk about Golden's glasses.
Listen, my glasses are awesome.
They are.
Blood splatter.
I love them.
Oh, with blood splatter tag. I couldn't remember if that's what I wore last week, but
it was.
I also
you
have blood
different
drippy.
ones?
Oh, yeah. These are all.
We should probably wrap up our thoughts on TCM real quick.
I mean,
well, I think that happened like an hour.
I obviously I think it's iconic. It started a series that's still to this day considered one of the main pillars of horror.
Yeah,
like we talked about, it created the face of the modern horror genre.
Absolutely.
I feel like any horror movie that deals with a family of killers, it's always going to be compared to this.
Oh, 100%.
This was the pioneer in that. And it's a great idea. Like I love that whole idea.
What about Mother's Day?
I'm trying to remember that one because I'm sure I've seen that one. I know I've seen Mother's Day.
Okay, well, I thought maybe that would be a movie you really liked. We'll talk about it in the future.
But like I feel like because the first time I saw House of a Thousand Corpses, which I do love, the whole time though I'm watching it going, oh, this is just Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
But Rob Zombie's version. Even Wrong Turn, Hills Have Eyes, all those things, I will always compare them to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, not just this first movie, but the series as the whole, which is, hey, you as long as you have
it's the clan dynamic,
everyone else in it is still part of it, and it still makes sense that it's still part of this family, and you can introduce different characters to every single one of these. It can be all different characters as long as you have someone with a chainsaw and wearing human faces.
As long as Leatherface is there, like as long as Leatherface has a chainsaw, that is basically what you need.
If you put chainsaw in the title, you need a chainsaw. Let's just be honest. Check out.
I mean, some of the movies kind of did do away with the family thing. a little bit. They focused too much on Leatherface, like Texas Chainsaw 3D. And one of the things that people probably don't like about the newest one, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is that Leatherface is the only one in that.
See, to me, Leatherface
well.
on his own isn't. I mean, he is scary. Obviously, he's this hulking thing with it, but he's
He sorta
not.
needs, like,
he
a
needs
guy.
the yeah. He
He needs a Lenny.
He's not intelligent. He's not
Or
this.
not Lenny.
So like
the other guy.
what really makes it big is that
He
you've
is
got this
Lenny.
big hulking, this tank character, but you also have all the other aspects of the family, including in every single one of them, pretty much the one that you didn't know was part of the family until it's too late because you trusted them.
Yeah, you need
But you need that
Master
to really
Blaster needs the little dude that
Yes.
sits on his shoulders. You need
make who run Bartertown.
Mad Max.
Thunderdome. Do you not know who Master Blaster is?
No, I thought he was talking
Master
about
Blaster.
because he watches a lot of those cool cartoons, and I haven't seen a lot of them, but he's always talking about them. So I thought maybe something from that.
No, it was the Mad.
And speaking of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, another series that I came into in the wrong order.
Oh,
It was
Oh,
first,
yeah.
it was
so you
Thunderdome.
consider that a slasher?
Yes,
Um,
yes, absolutely.
yeah, I definitely watched Mad Max or Road Warrior before I watched Mad Max.
See, I watched Thunderdome,
Actually,
Mad Max, Road Warrior, which
Speaking
seems to
of
be
it.
my way. 3, 1, 2,
that was a movie that I can relate to because, like,
because he lived
from
through
what
the
you
apocalypse.
said, that I feel like you're correct about Golden is when you talked about watching older films that gave you like, that kind of feeling like, I kind of want to turn this off. Was the original Mad Max
I don't
after
like the
I'd
original
already
Mad
seen
Max.
Road Warrior and Thunderdome?
Oh yeah, well, it's such a
It's
different.
so
Road Warrior
indie style,
I
and
think
it's
Road
that
Warrior is my
70s
favorite in the series
16
of
millimeter.
the original. Because I mean, I really love the new ones too, but Road Warrior is my favorite of that initial trilogy. Then Thunderdome, because Thunderdome was my first introduction into it, and it's so iconic. There's so many iconic shots
That one has like.
and everything. And then Mad Max to me was it was boring.
Well, Mad Max and Evil Dead have like a similar like film style. Like there's the original one that's like the gritty
Yeah.
vision of it.
Yeah, yeah.
The second one is like a sort of remake of that with like more of a budget.
Mhm.
With like, this is what I wanted to make. This is the
Yes.
movie I wanted to make
Except you know
originally.
what the difference
And then the
is?
third one is like the crazy big budget version of that.
And without at this
Tina
time
Turner.
seeing Furiosa, it follows what you were saying, the parallel to Evil Dead, where the second one was good and the third one arguably better. I mean, I know there's a debate between which one's better, 2 or Army of Darkness, but so you get Road Warrior, Beyond Thunderdome, same thing. People argue which one's better, but at least with Mad Max, the sequels got better.
Right. Like,
and not saying I don't like.
I mean,
But the sequels got better because they stuck to what made the originals good, which was practical effects
Well,
over the top.
but I feel
Oh,
like
dude,
George
Fury
Miller
Road.
didn't really worry about
That
what made those movies good. He knew what he wanted to freaking make, and he put that on the
Explosions.
screen.
and I
Yeah.
mean, that was
That's
and
how they were
and
advertised.
Yeah.
That's why Fury Road took
Where
10 years literally to
I-
make. He filmed a lot of that movie like way
Yeah.
before it came out.
I feel like Fede Alvarez and director from Evil Dead Rise.
I don't remember that.
They were more worried about what made Evil Dead good as a franchise, rather than we were talking about staying true to your narrative. You know,
Gotcha.
Well, because you have to in this day and age with the fanboys out there.
you don't have to.
But too many of the because I see it all the time.
I think
The remake of Evil Dead 2013, I like it. I think
I
it's
do.
a
Oh, yeah.
great
Oh, yeah,
movie.
yeah.
But
I
read the fanboy groups.
They
Like,
don't-
they shit on it all the time, and it's
weird
like,
about
why?
it.
Not
It's,
everyone's
because
gonna like
Bruce
a movie.
Campbell's not in it. And I saw somebody
I
point
mean-
out, they said, if the whole
That's
reason
fine,
you
but-
don't like the remake is because Bruce Campbell's not in it, then you belong in a Bruce Campbell fan club, not Evil Dead.
That's a fine reason to not watch the movie, but it's not an okay reason to not like it.
There's
Like, shit on
people
it
To think it's a bad movie.
There's-
You cannot like it because he's not in there, but you can't say it's a bad movie because it doesn't have Bruce Campbell.
horror. There's a certain set of horror movie fans that only like they don't like modern horror filmmaking. They just don't like the look of stuff. They don't like if they automatically
that's
assume the
okay.
worst about. Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to have those opinions, and you're allowed to just like whatever you like. I'm not going to agree with you, and I'm going to say like you're severely limiting yourself in the kinds of movies and stuff that you like and are able to watch if you only watch stuff from the 80s or whatever. Like you're allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to like what you like, but
You're allowed to be wrong.
It's
Just
like
say it
all
like
the
that.
people that dislike Halloween 3.
they're
Listen,
I mean,
first of all, it's garbage.
on one hand, I totally get
Boring.
why people don't like that movie. On the other
That
hand,
movie
I love
cranks.
that movie. Fucking rips, and
I don't
it's
like it.
good. And that movie should get remade.
That's a W movie.
Yeah, that movie should.
As in, why are we watching this?
Yeah.
They should.
Why are you not watching
That movie
this?
definitely should get remade so they can do what they originally wanted to do with those masks. Like it was supposed to be a portal to hell. Like it was supposed to be like this, the head open, like the mask like turned into like a portal, like all these monsters. But they had the budget for bugs and snakes, so that's why.
Dude, you took
Maggots.
Dude, they took the guy that was making the best masks of all time and had him, and they used his mask for the movie. I can't think of his name, but his masks are like super famous.
Tom Savini.
No, he actually made like Halloween masks.
I know. It's a joke, obviously.
Don Post.
Maybe.
Yeah, those were. That's the big mask guy.
Should we
Don
once again
Post.
try to wrap up our feelings?
Oh yeah. Well, anyways, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is like one of the most formidable movies in my horror movie watching. Like it was
For a long time, this was your favorite horror.
Yeah,
film.
it was, for a long time it was probably if somebody asked me
This
what
and
my
Night of the
favorite
Living
horror
Dead,
movie, my easy answer, yeah, Night of the Living Dead or
It holds up.
Return of the Living Dead, pardon me, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
I thought it was Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead is also like
Because you used to.
Night of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Night of the Living Dead, I probably own 8 DVDs of that.
Return of the Living Dead was my foray into Night of the Living Dead movies.
Oh, okay.
So again, out of order, but
I definitely.
but it
watched Night of
also
the Living Dead.
that's the one that spoke to me the most because it had that horror comedy
right.
element, and to me, like Return of the Living Dead has so many iconic things. The Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead 3.
Yeah,
like,
well,
for
that
me-
one has those good screaming Mad George effects.
Well, for me, like it was the main woman who was also on the cover already,
The
like with all the
spikes.
stuff.
yeah, the
spikes.
babe, of
That
course.
bro- that
that's the
brings
one,
you in.
of course.
The one that gets-
the hot.
with
The one that
Kirsten-
Hereditary- zombie lady.
Hereditary ripped off. No, I was kidding.
No, the only thing Hereditary ripped off was that girl's head.
It's not even. That's
Was
complete.
that
joke.
girl's head?
Just because there's a telephone pole that kills.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So that was our episode on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and about a million other subjects.
As we go down our Mark Twain.
I'm curious, like, if you feel that Friday the 13th isn't a slasher film, or if it is, I would love to know why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm talking to the
And
listener
again, this
viewer
isn't
here.
like one of those
I would
things
like
where I
to
would
feedback
argue
on
with
this,
someone
too.
and say you're wrong if they say it's a slasher. I understand why people would say that's a slasher. To me, though, with what the feeling that I look for me to look at something and say this to me is a slasher, it misses it.
I totally get. I 100% understand where you're coming from on that too. I get it. Like, and I don't think I quite expressed coherently how what your point is. I get it. Like I totally get what you mean. I understand it because that like the first one again like it has like it more has like European sensibilities of like how those horror movies looked, as opposed to like a more like like an 80s slasher movie where the killer is like front and center. You know, if you're not supposed to know who it is, they're wearing a mask or whatever, but they're not like being hidden behind the camera. It's not like it's usually not a POV shot. Sometimes it is like some of the kills in My Bloody Valentine have that, but there are ones where you see the fucking person doing the shit. So,
and it's also too like I mean one little other point that would go with my argument too is if I was to show somebody random person, whether they're a horror fan or not, a picture of Pamela Voorhees and say, who is this? What movie? How many are not going to know? But now I do the same
Really?
thing with Jason.
Okay,
I do that, and you're
Okay.
going to get way more
That's fair,
people
but-
saying that's Jason, Friday the 13th. That's Michael
but you're
Myers.
asking at that point, you're talking about people outside the genre.
But to me,
Hands
yes,
outside the
outside. But it's because for me, the slasher, what makes it a slasher, and what makes it.
How many people
is
can name
that
Freddy and not know
iconic.
the name of the movie that he's
But
from?
And I
That
would,
aren't horror
I would
fans.
say that they wouldn't say it's a slasher movie. I would say that if you ask like an average person, they would just say a horror movie.
But to me, like that's all it is, and it's not like. And again, if someone was like, "No, I think it's a slasher," it's not like with my other things that I would argue I would die on that hill.
Right.
I understand why people would feel that that's a slasher. I understand why you feel it's a slasher. I just don't feel it is for me. When I look at it and what I consider to be the boxes to mark off for to be a slasher movie,
It's
for me
definitely
to
debatable.
look at it and say, "Oh, you want a good slasher movie? Let's do this one." I don't feel it checks all. I don't think it checks all the boxes.
If somebody asked me
Just-
a slasher, the original Friday the 13th would not be the thing.
So,
I said.
like, Hardcore Henry, right? And
Not a
this
slasher
has
movie.
nothing to do with
right.
the actual
100%
movie,
not a
Hardcore Henry,
slasher
besides the fact that it's
Sure.
first person
I'm
view.
extremely interested to
So
see
good.
where
I
this is
love
going.
movie.
It'll make sense to you.
Okay.
So they do a horror movie version of that, okay, where
Mm-hmm.
the killer the whole time is just first person POV. That's not going to be a slasher for you.
I have to see it. I have to see what other boxes it checks off right. Because just for me,
For
the
me, it
original
sounds like
Friday
the
the 13th
only box
just barely misses.
that
It-
you need that separates.
No, because the feel too, I don't get the feeling like I get in a slasher movie.
But you got to remember, this is at the cusp of the creation of
I get that.
the slasher.
I get that, but I just don't feel it. To me, it just doesn't hit the right feeling that at the end of the day, I feel like it's a slasher. And the thing about the iconic, whatever, that's just one of the things I feel it misses. I feel like the sense of dread is different. There's a different kind of sense of dread because you get different, like when I watch, the J horror, there's a different sense of dread than I get from a slasher movie.
They also
and I
don't
think
know they're
that's what it
being
comes in.
picked off.
Right.
In Friday the 13th, the original one, they don't know they're being picked off one by one until like there's like a half hour left of the movie, and it's when they realize like people are dying.
Yeah, but that's kind of like Halloween as well.
Yeah.
Just to me, it's a different sense of dread.
I can't
I
argue.
think that's
Like,
the best way to explain it.
Like, I mean, the subgenre has definitely evolved, and it definitely
it's got a different vibe.
came to have different aesthetic appeals and stuff. So I can see where you're coming from like a visual standpoint and just overall, like we were talking about the tone and stuff. But I just don't. So, okay. So you have to have that killer that's like it can't just be somebody killing someone for it to be a slasher. It has to have this supernatural force that you're talking about. Persona.
For me, to consider it a slasher, yes. To have it really be the true feel of a slasher, for me, yes.
So if she walked out in that original film, had a hockey mask, or even the potato bag, okay, and then she pulls it off, and it's like, haha, I'm not Jason, I'm Pamela Voorhees, blah blah. I'm
Nobody
Jason's
thought it
mom.
was Jason.
I know, but I'm just saying, going back and watching it, retrospectively, if she had that hockey mask, do you feel that would be a slasher at that point?
If it wasn't like, so you're saying it wasn't POV kills.
No, it was
you
POV kills still.
Then no, it still wouldn't be. Because
So it's the POV
it's
thing
the
that
throughout-
bothers you.
it's not just the POV thing about, but I feel like if at the end you go, oh, that whole time your POV was the person was in a costume. I still don't feel like it because it didn't have then that sense of dread throughout the whole thing. It's just at the end going, oh look, it was in a costume.
Hero
I
Train
need-
and Prom Night also have sort of like but those are more
You
like
keep switching costumes, yeah. Do you feel like Terror Train is a slasher?
I'd have to rewatch it. I haven't seen
When's
that.
the last time you seen Friday the 13th?
The original?
Yeah.
A couple years ago.
Maybe if you rewatched it, you'd feel differently.
Man, I
Maybe.
rewatched that movie like 3 times in the past couple months. So we were
Yeah.
gonna do it. We were gonna do it over the
Oh
summer.
yeah, we're gonna do that
Yeah, that's right.
Camp Blood
All right.
segment next summer. All right, so we'll find out in June what he thinks of it.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Follow us on Facebook, Horror Dork on Facebook. We're gonna have a blue sky. I gotta set that up. I will post about that on our Facebook page. Golden has I want Golden to plug his film right now. He's running a Indiegogo campaign.
Yes. Go to Indiegogo, search Dingus Day, which is, and it's the only one you'll find. DYNGUS. We're doing Indiegogo for our next feature film, which is going to be, and it's a
Giallo.
It's a comedy horror
inspired.
It's basically, it's a holiday horror based on a local holiday that's huge here, which is Dingus Day.
Yeah, a lot of Polacks.
It's very it's folk. I'm like trying to think of all the words that people have already used to describe it when they heard the story of it. But so it's like a folk holiday horror comedy, but also with shades of some Hallmark movies in there.
Okay.
It is the guy coming back to his small town, running into the girl he was upset. We purposely leaned into that on some of the things because we thought it'd be fun. But the Indiegogo campaign has some awesome perks, things like the executive producer credits. We have this lamp, VHS lamps that I made myself. They're Dingus Day ones. We have the ultimate perk, the biggest perk that we put in there, which there's one left of, is you get a cameo role in the film, and then your character will actually get added to my back tattoo that I've been doing, which is all characters from my movie. So basically be immortalized on my back. And I don't know where on my back yet.
Somebody got that one already.
Yeah, somebody got and it's someone I don't know. Like that's what was the craziest thing to me, is that never met this dude. Yeah, he doesn't he knows some of the people that are in the Buffalo film community, but not even any of the ones that are in our core group that we work with mostly. So it was like this huge thing. He's just like a real big supporter of local indie films, and I'm excited actually to meet him and work with him because he's going to be tattooed on me. So we've already told the writer, the character you give him, I need you to give him something iconic and fun, because he's going to be in the tattoo.
Right.
And I want it to be something good. So yeah. But we've got some scenes that you get to be a featured extra in. There's a featured kill. You get to be one of the featured kills, which are all good, fun things. Our first movie that we're actually going to have a real crew. Mike and I are giving up a lot of reins here to have better people do the things that we kind of just did as the side job when we worked on the movie. So like a cinematographer, an AD. We brought a video editor on for it, and this is the thing that we've been talking about making for 7 years now, and has always been, we can't make it until we can make it, make it right. And the stars have aligned. we have an amazing script writer. We have an amazing cinematographer. These people have worked on other things, and they haven't worked with us on all the things, which is important because it brings in that other sensibility.
Right.
The people that aren't going to just blow smoke.
Outside,
which is huge too. And just talking to the cinematographer, the meeting was amazing, because one of his biggest concerns was he wants to make sure that he can come in here and do his job, but not take away the feel of our movies, like that when people watch, and you can feel that it's our voice and everything. He didn't want to take that away, and it's to me that was so huge that was actually one of his concerns. It wasn't how much you're going to pay me, how much free reign do you give me. It was, I don't want to come in here and take away what makes the September Brothers movies the September Brothers movies. And I'm like, well, if you could take away the bad parts that make those, that'd be great. But he's got an awesome eye. I got to work with him a little bit when I was on the set of Slasher Days of Summer, which was another Indiegogo crowdfunded local film that I actually did one of the perks to be have my name, one of the characters have my name in the movie, and then they butchered it, but that's okay. It was because the person they gave it to that had to say the name was one of their bigger stars. So when he messed it up, it's oh, okay, whatever. He's more important than Golden is, which fair, he is. But yeah, I got to work with him on that, and he has an amazing eye for stuff, and I think it's going to really kind of propel. Our big thing is trying to get past that barrier. That when you watch a movie, you watch some of these independent movies, it's akin to the uncanny valley. You know what I mean? You watch a movie, you can just there's certain aspects of like the way it looks, the way it feels, where you're like you can tell this wasn't professional. And we're always like I always feel like we're right at that level, but we never get past that barrier. We're right at that edge, and I think this is the movie that will finally get past that. We're not saying it's going to be a blockbuster. No, Hollywood studios aren't going to be knocking down our doors to get to distribute it or anything. But I think it'll definitely be something where you're going to watch it and not go, "Oh God, these guys made it with their home camera." So I think that's going to be the big step for us. But yeah, I would love any support on that.
Yeah. So check that out on Indiegogo. Dingus Day is the name of the film. Anthony, any final thoughts before we get out of here? No? All right. So that is Horror Dork. Yep. Follow us on Facebook, all that good stuff. We're gonna have a Blue Sky. It's a new Twitter kind of thing.
Yeah, we're on all platforms. So just
Twitter,
So we actually do have a
Horror Dork. Yeah, we do have a Twitter as well and Instagram. I'm gonna start going a little harder on the social media with that.
We have a MySpace.
We'll get all sorts of cool memes, and I'll start posting about the movies we're going to be doing. Next week we're doing Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and we went way over today. So maybe if we have time, we'll do Destroy All Neighbors next week. Not sure, but we did watch that one, and I liked it. So I do have some thoughts on that. But anyways,
it's not a slasher. No, it's not a slasher.
No, it's not a slasher.
I've watched it twice now.
Yeah,
but it's a good watch. So.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna have to. I'm kind of glad we didn't watch it today because I watched it once and that was like 2 weeks ago. So I am gonna need to refresh myself a little bit on it. So, yeah. So that's Horror Dork. Follow us on all the good stuff, and we will check you out next week. See ya.
Awkward silence. Well, Anthony gets the.